On February 16, 2022, a dark chapter unfolded in the streets of Jacksonville Beach when 33-year-old Jared Bridegan was shot to death. This once peaceful coastal community was shattered by this baffling murder, with only a 2-year-old daughter as a witness. However, the case doesn't end there. This is a story entangled with love, custody disputes, and a spine-chilling homicide that will leave you hanging on the edge of your seat. Prepare for the shocking revelation as we uncover all the hidden secrets and unveil the identity of the mastermind behind this gruesome murder. Jacksonville Beach, Florida is a beautiful coastal city located just east of Jacksonville, known for its inviting beach town atmosphere and vibrant lifestyle. However, this vibrant hub of entertainment in Florida unfortunately became an unsettling stage for the twisted case of Jared Bridegan in 2022, leaving an enduring mark on this tight-knit community. The victim, Jared Bridegan, was born to Gaylord and Joanne Bridegan on June 29, 1988, in Warrensburg, Missouri. At a young age, he relocated with his family to Jacksonville and later graduated from the Douglas Anderson School of the Arts in 2007. He pursued higher education at Utah Valley University and earned his BS degree in digital media with a focus on cinema production in the spring of 2014. Jared had a long-time interest in videography and was an accomplished user experience designer, serving as senior UX designer at Canopy, director of UX at Web.com, chief technology officer at Clean Simple Eats, and was finally a senior design manager at Microsoft. In addition to his professional career, Jared's first marriage was to Shauna Gardner in 2010, with whom he had twins, Liam and Abigail. Unfortunately, their once promising family life took a downturn due to personal reasons, leading to their eventual divorce in 2015 after 5 years of marriage. Despite the divorce, Jared and Shauna maintained an amicable relationship, and he often visited his twin children at her home. 2 years later, in 2017, Jared discovered happiness once more when he crossed paths with Kirsten Bridegan through a dating app. Their connection was instant, and they tied the knot later that same year in October. And 2 years down the line, in August 2019, the couple celebrated the arrival of their first child, Bexley. And in 2021, they welcomed their second child, London.
Thank you, that's beautiful.
It's a great picture, Daddy. I want your flower.
I see it, that's a beautiful flower.
On the other hand, Shauna got remarried in 2018 to a man named Mario Fernandez Saldana. Life seemed to be improving for the father of 4, with his family content and a fulfilling new job at Microsoft. However, as the saying goes, good things don't always last, and little did anyone know that Jared's life was on the brink of collapse. It all happened on the evening of February 16, 2022. Jared Bridegan had just dropped off his 9-year-old twin son and daughter at his ex-wife's home in Ponte Vedra Beach. He was on his way back to his residence in St. Augustine, which was about 26 miles from Shauna's house. He was with his 2-year-old daughter Bexley in the car when he encountered a tire obstruction near the exit of the Sanctuary neighborhood. It was near about 8 in the evening when he pulled the car over and got out to clear the tire from the road. However, it was that moment that Jared's life took a dreadful turn. As his Volkswagen Atlas's hazard lights continued to flash, Jared attempted to remove the tire with his daughter Bexley secure in her car seat. Suddenly, an assailant approached and mercilessly shot Jared multiple times in front of his terrified daughter. The still and quiet atmosphere after the gunshots was disrupted by a series of phone calls to Jared, which remained unanswered for quite some time until someone finally picked up. It turned out to be Jared's wife Kirsten on the line, but the person who answered the phone wasn't Jared. It was a police officer. He reassured Kirsten that their 2-year-old daughter Bexley was safe, but urged her to come to the police station immediately. Kirsten hurried to the police station where she found her daughter Bexley quietly coloring in a book. The devastating news of her husband's fatal shooting shattered her world. Meanwhile, the police were delving deeply into the investigation, fully aware that this case presented a formidable challenge. At the crime scene, they discovered Jared's wallet, watch, wedding ring, and his phone. Additionally, handgun shell casings were found at the scene, and alarmingly, the police observed that the bullets had also struck the interior of the vehicle within close proximity to where Bexley had been seated. Nevertheless, all this information proved insufficient for the investigators, who desperately needed more crucial evidence to solve the case. Several weeks after the murder, the police identified a dark-colored Ford F-150 truck as a vehicle of interest, which was spotted on the road at the time of Jared's murder. However, as the months passed, no significant breakthroughs were reported in the case. During this time, a reward offered by First Coast Crime Stoppers continued to grow, initially standing at $8,000 in the days following Jared's death, and eventually reaching $50,000 by May 9, 2022. As time elapsed, the police's working theory revolved around the notion that Jared's murder was an ambush. Initially, it was considered a potential carjacking gone wrong, but the impeccable timing and location increasingly pointed towards a carefully planned attack. Detectives began to suspect that the assailant knew Jared well, his route home, and the precise time he'd be at that location. Yet this was merely a hypothesis, lacking a definitive conclusion. The case hung in limbo, leaving Jared's family desperate for answers and justice.
We will find them and they will be held accountable.
His family and friends held a vigil last week begging for someone to come forward.
I have an odd sense of justice is coming. Doesn't mean I'm not going to stop fighting for it, because I think that's important. I think it's important that everyone keeps fighting for it, especially in this community where it happened. But I feel like it's coming.
His widow still holding on to hope for a break in the case.
While the police diligently pursued their investigation, delving deeper into the case each day, Kirsten refused to remain idle. She took matters into her own hands, printing out images of the car of interest and even creating an Instagram page dedicated to seeking justice for her late husband, Jared Bridegan. Nevertheless, the case remained unsolved, and 6 months had passed since the murder. In August 2022, the case regained momentum when a 61-year-old man named Henry Tienan was arrested on a felony driving charge. He caught the attention of the police handling Jared's case because he drove a vehicle resembling the one they were searching for. Once in custody, authorities questioned him extensively about Jared's murder.
So here you are in the truck back in January of this year, end of January, and you're on A1A out in Ponte Vedra. So here's what's up. Today's the most important day of your life, all right? I'm gonna shoot you straight. You got some tough decisions to make, but there's really only one right answer. Do you have a conscience?
I think so.
I think so too.
Ain't nothing else I can give you. I don't think I need an attorney.
After many in-depth discussions and interrogations with Henry Tienan, the detectives reached a conclusion. 4 months later, on January 25, 2023, Henry Tienan was arrested on murder charges related to Jared's death. In court a few weeks later, he entered a plea of not guilty to counts of second-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, accessory after the fact, and child abuse.
Can we have Henry Tienan, please? Mr. Tienan, if you'll approach the front of the courtroom and stand in front of the podium. Sir, your attorney, Mr. Bodie, is on Zoom. If at any time you need to speak with him, please let me know. You're here on a warrant that was reviewed by Judge Carbula. She has already determined probable cause for the charges of murder in the second degree, conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree, accessory after the fact to a capital felony, and child abuse. She has set your bonds at no bond, $500,003, $500,003, and $500,003. I'll appoint the public defender's office on this case and pass your case to circuit court on February the 16th.
The latter count concerning the endangerment of Bexley when her father was killed. However, his plea appeared bleak at best, given the mounting evidence against him. While the details weren't fully disclosed, it was almost certain that he wouldn't be released. Now, the perpetrator was behind bars and the case was over, right? No, it was far from being over. The arrest didn't signal the end of the tale. In fact, the case had just reached its climax, and the startling twists were only beginning to reveal themselves. Melissa Nelson, state attorney for Florida's 4th Judicial Circuit, stated that authorities believed Henry had pulled the trigger, but felt that he didn't act alone. Their investigation was ongoing, indicating there might be more to the case than initially met the eye. And during an interrogation, Henry revealed something that further fueled their suspicions, leading them closer to the truth. Investigators came to know that Henry had been a tenant in a Jacksonville property owned by Mario Fernandez Saldana, the current husband of Jared's ex-wife, Shauna. This revelation marked a significant turning point in the case, with detectives now focusing their attention on Mario. Additionally, Shauna couldn't escape the scrutiny of the police, raising suspicions about her involvement as well. Now it was time for the police to talk to Mario and Shauna. When interviewed, Mario denied any involvement in the murder, a statement echoed by Shauna as well.
As her innocence has come into question, Shanna Gardner spoke to me in the only TV interview she says she'll be doing to tell her side of the story.
I do want people to understand.
Did you have anything to do with Jared's murder?
No, I did not have anything to do with his murder.
Do you have any idea who might have done this?
I do not have any idea. As I said, we've been divorced. We don't run in the same social circles. All I know is that I would never want anybody to go through this.
But what piqued the detective's interest was the fact that Shauna didn't attend Jared's funeral, nor did she allow their children to visit. At this point, the police delved deeper into Shauna and Jared's past relationship, searching for any clues that could provide a motive for this premeditated murder. To their advantage, the police did uncover reasons that could have been a motive. It was revealed that Jared and Shauna had a turbulent marriage, filled with frequent arguments. According to Shauna, Jared was abusive, while Jared contended that Shauna was controlling. This toxic relationship ultimately ended in divorce in 2015. Although they seemed outwardly fine after their divorce, it was challenging to believe that they'd truly moved beyond their troubled past. While Shauna's hand in the crime was being questioned, an arrest warrant was issued against Mario. The specific evidence behind it wasn't disclosed until March 16, 2023, when Mario was arrested and indicted by a grand jury on charges of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, solicitation to commit a capital felony, and child abuse. Authorities revealed that they discovered 3 handwritten checks from Mario among Henry's bank records, obtained in October 2022. Although both suspects' warrant affidavits were heavily edited, they highlighted discrepancies in Henry's initial claim that he'd spoken to Mario only once in May after his lease ended in February 2022. Contrary to his statement, phone records showed 35 phone contacts in February, 30 in March, and several more in May and June. Meanwhile, just before Mario's arrest, Henry pleaded guilty to second-degree murder with a weapon and agreed to testify truthfully against any accomplice. Then, on August 17, 2023, 36-year-old Shauna Gardner was arrested at her parents' residence in West Richland, Washington, for the first-degree murder of her ex-husband.
Can I be with the kids, or can you at least bring the kids out to me?
Yeah, we'll have to talk to these officers inside, okay?
I have to be.
Marlon, my neighbor, has temporary.
I'm here, Shanna. I'm outside.
Oh, they're gonna call you.
You want to get some shoes?
Oh, yeah, probably.
Can I?
Get some shoes for her.
You want me to go get her the shoes?
I'll get her shoes and all of it. Here's the shoes for her.
You can roll up to the front if you want.
Liam was on top of me. He came in at 5.
I heard him.
Taking it at 5.
Yep.
Almost turning to know.
You go in with the kids. You're all good with that?
Oh, is that okay?
Still good with them. You guys good with them going back in?
You go over going with the kids.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Do you want me to go get her pants?
Abby? Oh, alright. Let's say you have orders on the Instagram that I was managing for you. You have orders to just have Grandma help you get into. Where are your jeans, Mom? I know where they are.
Yeah, they'll let her take what she has, and then they'll order more if they have to, yeah.
Do you want to get all of my medications are in my bathroom on my counter and in the drawer under the right seat? It has a box that I don't have, but I mean, you guys call my doctor.
We'll just need to see like it's a valid, each jail has a medical personnel evaluation.
Oh, okay. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
It's gonna be the white vehicle back there. We'll go to the
Love you, honey.
passenger side. Yep.
Best off.
Is that property?
Medicine.
Good? I'm good, thank you.
Alright. We're gonna bring you inside real quick. Get you out of the long car, right? Now step out for me. We're gonna go through these doors over here. And then there's gonna be a hallway to your left there. Have you take a left there for me. And we'll go down to this last door here on the left. Have you stand there for me. North sound. And I'll have you take a seat over here. And what I'll do, actually, if you want to face the wall for me. Which one's tight?
They're both tight. The right one's more than
The right one's more tight? Okay.
but it's okay if it is.
I'll loosen it a little bit. Are those cuffs putting any strain on your shoulders or anything?
Alright, but it's okay.
Okay. Well, I'll get you down to jail as soon as possible, and then we'll get you out of these cuffs.
How far away is the jail?
Probably about 10-15 minutes.
10 minutes, but there's a bunch of instructions, though.
I feel bad. Do you want me to grab this and put it in the trash?
No, we'll get it for you. That's all right.
Do I need to take my water?
Do you want any more water before we go?
Sure.
You want a little bit left?
I'm just trying to throw it out.
Good. Yep. So I'm gonna put your seatbelt on. I'll get you down there. It's hot. So hot, my vehicle can't keep up.
I say it's hotter for you guys wearing all the stuff you guys have to do.
And I'll get you down there so you're out of cuffs. I know those are uncomfortable. So just sit tight for me, all right?
The indictment alleges that she and Mario conspired to kill Jared and solicited Henry to carry out the act. Nelson's office stated that they'd be seeking the death penalty for both Shauna and Mario.
Shanna's arrest ends one horrific chapter of our pursuit for justice for Jared, and now we open a new one. This next chapter will be excruciating. We expect to see justice carried out to the fullest extent of the law.
Shauna was then awaiting extradition to Duval County, Florida. She'd not entered any plea or been arraigned yet. She remained in Washington, with her next court date scheduled for September 14th, 2023. During her extradition hearing on September 14th, Shauna appeared on screen from the Benton County Jail via WebEx. The judge informed her that the court had not yet received the governor's extradition order, which meant Shauna would have to stay in Washington for a few more weeks. The hearing was adjourned and rescheduled for October 19th, 2023. Even though the final verdict hasn't yet been decided, it appears that both she and Mario are likely to be behind bars for a long time. In her latest interview, Shauna expressed being shocked upon learning about her ex-husband's death. She recounted, "I fell to the floor because I was devastated. Even though we didn't always get along, he was still the father of my kids." She stated that she was unaware of what had happened to Jared, but she was fully cooperating with detectives and did not anticipate facing any criminal charges herself. What do you believe constitutes true justice here? On May 15, 1930, a young, struggling couple in Chicago, 17-year-old Catherine and 25-year-old Michael Morin, reached out to the police with troubling news. Their 2-year-old daughter, Mary Agnes, had been kidnapped. The story they recounted was both simple and unsettling. A woman named Julia Otis had entered their lives over a span of 2 days, showing an unusual interest in Mary Agnes and bringing gifts. On her second visit, Julia proposed taking Mary Agnes shopping for new clothes, an offer that Catherine reluctantly agreed to. Little did they know, that outing would be the last time they'd see their daughter. Despite the efforts of the authorities, Mary remained missing, and the truth of her fate remained buried for over 90 years. So who was Julia Otis? What series of events unfolded that finally brought the long-concealed truth to light? Chicago, a major metropolis in Cook County, Illinois, is located on the southwestern shore of Lake Michigan. Chicago is a vibrant city known for its architecture, culture, and history. Home to a population of over 2.7 million, its skyline features iconic skyscrapers like Willis Tower. The city boasts world-class museums, such as the Art Institute of Chicago, and many other attractions, such as Navy Pier and Millennium Park. Known for its lively music scene and the culinary delight of deep dish pizzas, Chicago's diverse neighborhoods and rich history make it a captivating destination for both residents and visitors. According to statistical data, the chance of being a victim of violent crime in Chicago is 1 in 115, and property crime is 1 in 42. And it's here our story begins, back in the era of the Great Depression. At the young age of 13, Catherine Morin married Michael Morin in 1926. Together, they commenced their family story just before the Great Depression took its toll. Their home, situated above a grocery store at 5200 South Wentworth Avenue, became the backdrop for their lives. Their first child, Mary Agnes, came into the world on May 10, 1928. Her birth marked a significant chapter in their journey. By May 1930, Mary had grown into a chubby youngster with blonde wavy hair and shy blue eyes. At the time, the Morin family had also experienced the joy of welcoming another addition, a baby girl named Anastasia. Catherine was also carrying their third child. Amidst these developments, the Morin family found themselves grappling with poverty. Michael's meager income of $15 per week that came from distributing handbills was insufficient to support his growing family. To ease their financial struggles, a concerned relative of Catherine took action. They placed an advertisement in the social service column of a local newspaper, seeking financial support for the family. This step wasn't uncommon, considering the country's entry into the Great Depression. Newspapers featured dedicated sections for individuals and families in need of assistance, and social workers and volunteers would often step in to aid those who would place such advertisements. However, the well-intentioned advertisement placed by Catherine's relative would soon prove to be a misstep, the tragic consequences of which would echo for decades. On the evening of May 13, 1930, Edgar Gilpin, a male nurse and philanthropist, stumbled upon the advertisement placed on behalf of Catherine and Michael. He decided to pay a brief visit to the Morin household. There, he gifted Michael a suit and a pair of shoes before taking his leave. The day after, on May 14, 1930, Catherine was home alone with her daughters. While scrubbing the floor, she was interrupted by a knock on the door. Opening it, she was met by an attractive and well-dressed young woman. Catherine would later describe her as around 22 years old, with protruding teeth and a cultured tone in her voice. The strange woman identified herself as Julia Otis, and she carried with her clothing and a bundle of groceries. Once inside, she placed the groceries down and proceeded to explain the purpose of her visit to Catherine. Julia informed Catherine that she'd been sent by a social worker named Mrs. Henderson, who had come across their advertisement in the newspaper and wished to assist the family. Finding herself at ease with this mysterious benefactor, Catherine confided in Julia about the many challenges the family were facing. As they conversed, Julia revealed that her late husband had left her a considerable inheritance. She went on to say that she'd like to have a child like Mary, and also mentioned her wish to temporarily take Mary to California. She assured Catherine that Mary would be well taken care of and would return looking better and healthier. However, Catherine's concern for her daughter's safety prevailed, and she disagreed with the idea. She was simply uneasy about sending 2-year-old Mary on such a long journey with a stranger. Julia bid her farewell, but before she left, she assured Catherine that she'd return the next day. She promised to bring clothes for the children, along with supplies for Catherine's impending baby and additional provisions for the household. As a parting gesture, Julia handed Catherine $2. As promised, Julia returned to the Morin home the following day, which was May 15, 1930. She brought with her groceries and an assortment of baby clothes. Not stopping at that, she revealed that she'd managed to secure a better job opportunity for Catherine's husband, Michael. Adding to her generosity, Julia proposed taking Mary to a nearby store to purchase clothes and shoes for her. Though hesitant, Catherine eventually agreed, as she was grateful for all the assistance and supplies Julia had provided. When recalling the event later, Catherine would note that Mary had cried and resisted going with Julia, yet the young child was led away against her wishes. Thus, Julia strolled down the street with Mary by her side until they vanished from sight. As time passed without any sign of Mary or Julia's return, both Catherine and Michael grew increasingly anxious. They soon turned to the police and embarked on a search for their daughter. Despite their efforts, their attempts to locate Mary that day yielded no results. The following day, May 16, 1930, brought an unexpected development. A letter arrived for the Morin family. The method by which the letter was delivered remained uncertain, but it was reportedly written by none other than Julia. The letter contained reassurances and explanations from Julia. She explained that she'd taken Mary to California and made arrangements for the child's specialized care by hiring a nurse. Julia indicated her intention to return with Mary after 2 months. The letter also mentioned Mary's contentment, stating that she was dressed elegantly and was eating well. Julia offered her commitment to support the Moronis and urged them not to worry about Mary's well-being. The letter was signed off with the name Julia Otis. As both Michael and Catherine read this letter feeling increasingly confused and worried, they had no idea that it would be the last communication they received from Julia. Following this, the police initiated a thorough search of Chicago's railway stations. They hoped to uncover any sign that could hint at Mary's potential journey by train. Simultaneously, Catherine took action by securing a warrant from a judge, formally accusing Julia of kidnapping Mary. But no major leads were found despite all these efforts. 2 weeks following the kidnapping, the Morin family were once again confronted with an unexpected letter. Its contents left them stunned and gripped by fear for their daughter's safety. The letter bore the signature of a woman who identified herself as Alice Henderson. Within its lines, Alice delivered a warning to the Moronis. She revealed that Julia Otis was her cousin. The letter shattered any hopes of Mary's return, as Alice conveyed that Julia had no intention of giving their daughter back. According to Alice's account, Julia had faced significant personal tragedies, with the loss of both her infant child and husband the year before. This profound grief, coupled with desperation for joy and companionship, had driven Julia to take Mary from the Moronis. This letter from Alice marked the only communication the Moronis would ever receive from her. Subsequently, authorities determined that the 2 letters the Moronis had received were written by the same person. The handwriting in Julia's letter closely resembled that in Alice's letter, suggesting a link between the two. In the wake of this revelation, the authorities continued their search for Mary Agnes, as well as the 2 women, Julia Otis and Alice Henderson. Yet, despite their determined efforts, the investigation yielded no traces of individuals matching these names who could be linked to the abduction. Over a year later, in July 1931, a chance encounter brought a new development. An elderly Native American woman named Martha Thompson was discovered pushing a cart on her way to join a traveling circus. Upon further inspection, the cart contained a 3-year-old girl with blonde hair and blue eyes. These features of the child were similar to that of Mary. When asked about the child, Martha maintained that the child had been abandoned by her mother, a woman named Florence Fuller. She pleaded to be allowed to care for the daughter as her own. The child turned out not to be Mary. The Morin family didn't recognize the girl as their missing daughter. As time went on, 6 more children were added to the Morin household, in addition to Anastasia and Mary. Despite the large family, Catherine's personal struggles endured. The haunting memory of her eldest daughter's kidnapping continued to affect her well-being. Catherine held a deep regret for having allowed Julia Otis to lead Mary away that fateful day in 1930, and even decades later, the pain of the incident weighed heavily on her. Through the decades that followed, intermittent newspaper stories about Mary's disappearance continued to surface, especially whenever other children went missing. However, it wasn't until 22 years later, in 1952, that Mary's narrative garnered the attention of Eden Wright, a reporter at the Chicago Daily News. An intriguing detail in a photograph of the Morin family caught his eye. Each member bore a striking resemblance to the others. The Chicago Daily News collaborated with the California-based newspaper to publish images of the Morin family, hopeful that this might finally lead them to Mary Agnes. The connection to California held significance, as Julia Otis had mentioned taking Mary there all those years ago. The printed pictures didn't go unnoticed. They were spotted by a man who claimed that one of Mary's sisters bore a resemblance to his wife, 24-year-old Mary McClelland. He boldly stated that the resemblance was so uncanny that it could very well have been a photograph of his wife. Beyond the striking resemblance, what made this story even stranger was that Mary McClelland was adopted as a child. Her adoptive parents were named Charles and Nora Beck. While DNA testing wasn't available during that time, authorities took meticulous steps to gather evidence. They obtained a blood sample from McClelland, along with impressions of her teeth. Additionally, anthropologists examined McClelland's physical attributes and compared them with photographs of the missing Mary Agnes. Their findings pointed to a distinct similarity between the dental impressions from McClelland and the Morin family. Likewise, they identified shared physical features between McClelland and the images of Mary. To further bolster the case, a fingerprint expert compared McClelland's fingerprints to those of the Morin family. This analysis indicated a potential familial link. Concurrently, doctors analyzed the blood samples and arrived at a similar conclusion. Although these efforts collectively painted a compelling picture, none of the tests yielded conclusive evidence that McClelland was indeed the missing girl. Yet amid it all, some facts implied that McClelland was unlikely to be Mary Agnes. There were distinct indications that set them apart. One such piece of evidence was the medical history. Mary had undergone surgery for a ruptured navel before her kidnapping, resulting in a discernible scar. However, McClelland bore no such scar, which Mary would likely have still carried into adulthood. Another distinguishing factor was a strawberry birthmark that had been on Mary's cheek. This mark was entirely absent on McClelland. Adding weight to the disparity, an aging physician named Dr. E.W. Marathu stepped forward, affirming that he delivered McClelland to an undisclosed mother on November 17, 1927. Remarkably, McClelland's mother had even provided a photograph of her daughter, dated 1928. This predated Mary's kidnapping by 2 years. It was conclusive evidence that McClelland had been adopted well before the tragic incident. Despite the discrepancies, Mary McClelland embarked on a journey from California to Chicago to meet the Morin family. She formed a close bond with the Moronis. Don Morin, a nephew of Mary, recalled shared experiences like a visit to the Museum of Science and Industry, which they'd embarked on together. "Never once did she say she was my aunt," he said. Mary's parents held on to the fragile hope of being reunited with their daughter until the very end. Her father, Michael Morin, passed away in 1957 at the age of 55. His last words on his deathbed were, "They never found my baby girl." Mary's mother, Catherine, followed in 1962 at age 49. Catherine's heartache persisted until her passing. Her sorrow over her missing daughter remained a constant shadow in her life. Mary McClelland, who'd bonded with the Morin family in her own way, died in 2005 at the age of 77. Subsequently, in 2008, a DNA test finally confirmed that McClelland was not Mary Agnes. So answers about Mary's whereabouts continued to elude the Morin family. Things on the investigative front grew silent and stalled until the case of Mary's disappearance fell into the lap of Cook County Detective Jose Rodriguez. On June 10, 2022, 92 years after Mary's kidnapping, Rodriguez assumed the responsibility of investigating her disappearance. This renewed pursuit signified a new chapter in the quest for answers. It also demonstrated the commitment to resolving the decades-old mystery. This was a mystery that I, personally, just had to figure out to solve for myself, Rodriguez said. The investigation kicked off by tracing the original police reports. Rodriguez then worked on finding members of Mary's family. A breakthrough arrived when he stumbled upon an online forum where an individual identified themselves as a Moroni. Following this, he initiated contact. He soon found out that some Moroni family members had used DNA testing services like Ancestry and 23andMe. Building on this, he found another family member who consented to provide their DNA for examination. Rodriguez then sifted through the DNA results, looking for an unfamiliar person related to the Moronis. That was when he discovered Lori Hart, who turned out to be a second or third cousin. Lori was the granddaughter of a woman named Jeanette Bouchard. Rodriguez began to suspect that Jeanette might be the missing Mary. Without wasting time, Rodriguez contacted Lori, who connected him with her aunt named Terry Arnold, one of Jeanette's daughters. Rodriguez shared his suspicion with Terry that her mother Jeanette could be Mary Agnes. Terry was initially skeptical, but agreed to undertake a commercial DNA test to challenge the theory. Terry's reasoning stemmed from her belief that her maternal grandmother's lineage had Polish origins, so she expected the DNA results to reflect Polish heritage. However, she was wrong. The DNA results came in on October 28, 2022, revealing a twist that defied expectations. Contrary to Terry's assumption, the test revealed that Terry's genetic makeup was primarily Irish. Interestingly, the Moroni family also had Irish roots. The DNA test also revealed a genetic link between Terry and members of Don Moroni's family, hinting at a cousin relationship. This revelation cast Terry into the midst of an historical Chicago cold case, weaving her into a complex web of connections and family ties. As the pieces began to fall into place, Terry's conviction grew stronger. She believed that her mother, Jeanette, was indeed Mary. This newfound insight was tinged with a bittersweet reality. Jeanette had passed away in 2003 in Florida at the age of 75. Terry, however, was able to provide investigators with an insightful glimpse into her mother's life. According to Terry, Jeanette Bouchard was believed to be born on April 14, 1928. It was also believed that her biological father had passed away a mere 2 months after her birth. Her early years were spent in Chicago. Raised by her presumed mother, Jeanette Sellerek Darris Anderson, and her stepfather, Frank Darris, Jeanette was nurtured within a strong Catholic foundation. Terry emphasized that Jeanette received a good education, never went hungry, and was never subjected to abuse. Anything my mom needed when she was a kid, she had, Terry said. Occasional visits to Chicago punctuated Jeanette's life, with her last visit likely being for a funeral sometime between 1989 and 1995. Despite his investigation, Rodriguez found nothing overly concerning about the family. However, Terry shared an intriguing detail. She said Jeanette's stepfather, Frank Darris, had once cryptically told Jeanette that Sellerek, the woman who raised her, was not her biological mother. Terry also revealed that she'd recently discovered that Sellerek had a previous short-lived marriage to a man named John Fahey before her marriage to Frank Darris. A 1930 census record suggested that Jeanette, John Fahey, and Sellerek had lived together in Chicago at that time. Later in the 1940s, Jeanette married Edward Jennings, and years later, she entered into another marriage with a man named Burchard. Both of her husbands had since passed away. Jeanette was a devoted mother to 3 children, including Terry. She also had a daughter named Barbara Joan Jennings, who passed away in 2006, and a son named Edward Clifton Jennings Jr., who passed away in 2004. She loved us completely, Terry fondly recalled. With a career spanning over 50 years, Jeanette dedicated herself to nursing. Her love extended beyond her children to her pets. She cherished her dogs and cats. Terry shared that Jeanette would have her pets cremated upon their passing, and even after her own death, she was laid to rest with their remains. Terry also revealed that her mother held a deep appreciation for opera, with a special fondness for Madame Butterfly. Jeanette's multifaceted life story painted a picture of resilience, love, and an abiding passion for the things that truly mattered to her. In light of all these discoveries, the Cook County Sheriff's Office openly acknowledged its inability to take the necessary measures for confirming Jeanette's identity as Mary Agnes. Detective Rodriguez explained that such a course of action would potentially involve exhuming the bodies of both Jeanette and Mary's mother, Catherine Moroni. However, Terry was firmly opposed to exhuming her mother's remains. In spite of this, both Terry and the Maronis remained resolute in their belief that Jeanette was indeed the missing Mary Agnes. Terry and the Maronis have engaged in several phone conversations since the revelation. Both parties expressed their delight in getting to know one another. Terry shared photographs of her mother with her newfound cousins. She believes her mother would have been happy to be part of a bigger family. Nevertheless, a lingering question persists. The path that led Jeanette from the Moroni family to those who raised her remains unclear. Terry mentioned that she'd never come across the name Julia Otis before, and that she lacked knowledge about the circumstances that led her mother Jeanette to be raised by her grandmother, Celarek. Terry confessed harboring a sense of resentment towards her grandmother due to the possibility that she may have played a role in the events surrounding Mary's disappearance years ago. However, upon reflection, her perspective shifted as friends and family emphasized that the twists of fate ultimately led her to having her mother. Regardless of the uncertainties, Terry stressed, the Moroni family can rest assured that Jeanette was genuinely and deeply loved. The Moroni family also achieved a sense of closure. One of our hopes was that, after Mary was taken, she'd find happiness and be well cared for. And she was, Don Moroni said. As we come to the end of this intriguing story, we're left with a mix of emotions and questions. The lives of the Moroni family, Terry Arnold and Jeanette Burchard, have shown us how life's paths can take unexpected turns, shaping our stories in unique ways. But what do you think happened to Mary Agnes immediately after she was kidnapped by Julia Otis? And who exactly was Julia Otis, the woman who changed the course of the Moroni family's life?
Mother of a Wichita State student is in shock tonight after police found her daughter's body in the trunk of her boyfriend's car Saturday.
Her compassion for others just helped her through whatever she may have been going through.
That voice, that smile, that happiness, that joy, that pure love that she had for life and everybody else.
Pay attention to your children. Keep them close.
Sadly, one family found themselves confronted with such a hidden secret, which surfaced in an unforeseen tragic manner. On the morning of August 26, 2023, two disturbing 911 calls set in motion a series of events that led to a profoundly unsettling discovery. The first call was made by a concerned woman in Carolina who feared that her 22-year-old son, Alexander Lewis, may have inflicted harm upon his 19-year-old girlfriend, Zaiylah Bronson, in Wichita, Kansas. Shortly thereafter, a second call was received, this time from Lewis himself, in which he admitted to strangling Zaiylah. When officers located Lewis's vehicle, they discovered Zaiylah in an unconscious state. Despite their efforts to resuscitate her, she was tragically pronounced deceased at the scene. The haunting question that lingered was why Lewis would commit such an act against his own girlfriend. The answer to this question would ultimately expose the grim reality of domestic violence woven into the very fabric of society. Today's story takes us to Wichita, Kansas, which holds the distinction of being the largest city in the state and is a dynamic center for culture, commerce, and innovation. Often referred to as the air capital of the world, it's renowned for its robust aviation industry, with major aircraft manufacturing companies making their home here. The city's landscape is dotted with numerous cafes, making it an ideal place to unwind on a leisurely afternoon. However, like any place, Wichita does have its share of challenges. The city's no stranger to extreme weather conditions, limited entertainment options, and traffic congestion. Yet the most concerning issue is something else. Wichita has, unfortunately, ranked among cities with some of the highest crime rates in the United States. Tragically, 19-year-old Zaiylah became a victim of these, and her troubles didn't originate from the city at large, but within the confines of her own home. Zaiylah Bronson was welcomed into the world as the first child of Stevie and Taranza Bronson on September 13, 2003. At the time, her father Stevie was stationed at the Fort Campbell military base on the Kentucky-Tennessee border. Just a year later, Zaiylah embraced her role as the proud older sister when her little sister, Zaquiria, entered their lives. When Zaiylah turned 4, they were blessed with the arrival of a younger brother, Xavier. The Bronson family later relocated to Kansas, where Zaiylah was still in elementary school. Enrolling at Lansing High School, Zaiylah was far from an ordinary student. She was truly exceptional. Her excellence extended to both academics and athletics. During her high school years, she actively participated in track and became a vital part of the powerlifting team. Her achievements in these sports led her to earning numerous medals for her team. Her academic prowess was equally impressive, culminating in her graduation 1 year ahead of her peers. In 2021, Zaiylah embarked on her academic journey at Wichita State University, where she focused on mathematics. For her studies, she resided alone in Wichita, while her parents and 2 younger siblings remained approximately 3 hours away in Leavenworth. Despite living independently, Zaiylah maintained a strong and loving connection with her family. She made it a point to reach out to at least one of them every day, ensuring their close bond remained unbroken. Whenever she had 2 consecutive days off, she'd eagerly make the trip to visit her family, cherishing those precious moments together. Spending quality time with friends and family was, without a doubt, one of her favorite things to do. Those fortunate enough to be close to Zaiylah would paint a picture of her as a vibrant, spirited young woman filled with dreams, aspirations, and a heart full of love. Her generosity knew no bounds. She'd willingly give her last penny to someone in need, always accompanied by a warm and welcoming smile. It was her extraordinary kindness that shone as one of her most exceptional qualities. Among the many who held nothing but admiration and affection for Zaiylah was her godmother, Dawn Wilson, who initially crossed paths with the family while working alongside Zaylah's father at a prison. The connection they formed spoke volumes about the kind of person Zaiylah was.
That voice, that smile, that happiness, that joy, that pure love that she had for life and everybody else.
Apart from her commitment to her studies and sports, Zaylah's talent shone in the realm of singing. She had a deep love for music, especially gospel songs, and often showcased her beautiful voice by singing as a gospel artist in Wichita. Yet, among all her endeavors, one of Zaylah's most heartfelt passions was being the best dog mom to her beloved black mini poodle Oliver, her only companion while she was away from friends and family. By 2023, at the age of 19, Zaiylah seemed to have it all figured out. She completed her first year at WSU and was excited to begin her second year, embarking on a path of becoming a math teacher. She had also found love in 22-year-old Alexander Lewis, who was part of the U.S. Air Force. Zaylah's family also liked him and found him smart and well-spoken. However, the most unexpected surprise came in early 2023 when Zaiylah discovered that she was expecting a baby. Zaylah's mother was the first to learn about her pregnancy, revealed to her at approximately 6 weeks along. After a doctor's appointment, Zaiylah excitedly arrived at her mother's house, displaying a bag filled with various items. She explained, "Mom, look what the doctor gave me," while proudly revealing the contents. Initially, her mother saw blankets and assumed they were for her dog Oliver. However, as she continued to inspect the items, she came across diapers. The family was shocked at the news due to Zaylah's young age, but they were all eagerly anticipating the arrival of the new family member. As the year progressed, Zaiylah had more good news to share with her family. She excitedly talked about her new car and her recent job as a manager at City Trends, a clothing store. However, her focus remained primarily on her unborn baby, which she'd learned would be a boy. He was due in February 2024. Though the topic of the baby's name came up during the last conversation Zaiylah had with her mother, she wanted it to be a surprise. While a name had already been chosen, only Zaiylah and Lewis, the child's father, were privy to this secret. Tragically, Zaylah's loved ones would never have the chance to discover the chosen name. Shortly after 11 a.m. on Saturday, August 26, 2023, North Carolina authorities received a 911 call from the concerned mother of Alexander Lewis, whose identity was kept confidential for privacy reasons. She reported that Lewis had told her he'd fatally harmed his 16 weeks pregnant girlfriend, Zaiylah Bronson, in Wichita, and she was deeply worried about the situation. As the Wichita Police Department learned about the incident from their counterparts in North Carolina, they received a call from Alexander Lewis himself. He confessed to having been involved in a physical altercation with his girlfriend during which he'd strangled her. He also revealed that the incident had taken place at her residence and she was now with him. These two distressing calls prompted Wichita police officers to respond to two different locations. They initially went to Zaylah's apartment at 3945 East 17th Street North, apartment 1107. After searching the residence for Zayylah, they found it unoccupied. Following a record search of Lewis's cell phone number, Officer Fields discovered that Lewis lived in apartment 101 at 7677 East 21st Street in Wichita. The officers repeatedly knocked at apartment 101, and Lewis eventually answered the door. After his arrest, the officers inquired about Zaylah's whereabouts. Lewis responded, "I got scared. I was over at her place. I didn't know what to do. My keys are on the box in the living room. She's in my car." The officers sought clarification, asking if he meant the trunk of his vehicle, to which Lewis confirmed that he was. Officers retrieved Lewis's car keys from inside his apartment and opened the trunk of his 2009 black Kia Rio, which bore North Carolina license plates. Inside the trunk, they discovered Zaylah's lifeless body covered with a white blanket. Although they couldn't detect a pulse, the officers began administering chest compressions in a desperate attempt to save her life while awaiting the arrival of paramedics. Tragically, around 12 p.m., Zayylah was pronounced deceased and her body was transported to the medical examiner's office. Within the vehicle's trunk, officers also found an axe and a shovel. On the floor of the front passenger's seat, they came across a black backpack and a crumpled piece of white notebook paper. This paper contained an apparent note written by Zayylah, which had been left unsigned and was addressed to Dear Family. Inside the backpack, officers discovered a roll of duct tape, several bottles of water, clothing, a handheld flashlight, a head-mounted flashlight, multiple towels, and trash bags. On the front passenger's seat, a black hooded sweatshirt with white markings was found, along with a purse containing Zaylah's wallet, identification, and car keys. The news was a devastating blow to Zaylah's family. Her mother later recounted that on a typical Saturday, she had attended a women's gathering after a short shopping trip. Her day was proceeding normally until she received a phone call from her husband, who inquired about any contact with the police. Taranza vividly described her reaction, saying, "I immediately let go of everything I was holding, my purse and all my belongings, and just crumpled to the floor, fully aware that her daughter had been taken away from her forever." But why and how? The only individual with the answers was the person in custody. Inside the station of the Wichita Police Department, detectives conducted an extensive interrogation with Alexander Lewis after ensuring he was aware of his Miranda rights. They delved into the history of his relationship with Zayylah, and Lewis revealed that their involvement spanned a year. However, he painted a different picture from the seemingly ideal romance perceived by others. According to Lewis, their relationship was far from perfect. He claimed that during their relationship, Zayylah had cheated on him and had interacted with other men multiple times, leading to issues in their relationship. Then, approximately 3.5 months before her death, Zayylah discovered that she was pregnant with their child. Despite the instability in their relationship, she decided to carry their child to term. Lewis went on to provide an account of events from August 25, 2023. On that day, he had called Zayylah at her workplace, during which she received an incoming call from an unknown male. Lewis overheard this conversation in the background and inquired about it, leading to a heated argument between them. Around 9:30 p.m. on the same evening, Zayylah unexpectedly arrived at Lewis's apartment. The argument that had begun earlier that day was reignited, ultimately resulting in Zayylah ending their relationship abruptly and leaving his residence after spending about half an hour there. Following her departure, Lewis described feeling stressed by the situation. However, Zayylah resumed contact by sending him text messages. Among the messages, she expressed her intent to find another man who would be more attentive to her needs, along with a few other things which Lewis interpreted as provocations intentionally meant to upset him. In previous arguments, Lewis recounted, Zayylah had expressed frustration with him for not being more proactive in pursuing her. So this time, he said he decided to go to her apartment. According to Lewis, he arrived at Zaylah's apartment at approximately 10:30 p.m. with the hope of reconciling with her. Surveillance footage from Zaylah's apartment complex revealed that she returned home alone at 10:14 p.m. on August 25th. Lewis arrived shortly afterward at 10:32 p.m. he was observed opening his trunk and rearranging its contents. He then lingered around the courtyard and the nearby stairwell before approaching the apartment door. Lewis said when he rang the doorbell, he found Zaiylah talking on the phone with another male, a sight that stirred intense feelings of distress within him. Lewis recounted that he and Zaiylah engaged in a prolonged argument that continued throughout the night, without either of them getting any sleep. He stated that she pushed him to a breaking point, causing him to feel overwhelmed by her actions. At 8:13 a.m. on the morning of August 26, 2023, Zaiylah briefly took her dog to the apartment courtyard, and Lewis joined them. This outing was confirmed by surveillance footage and marked the last time Zaiylah was seen alive. Upon their return to the apartment, the verbal altercation between Zaiylah and Lewis escalated further. They continued to argue while seated next to each other on the living room couch, with Zaiylah facing away from him. Overwhelmed by frustration and wanting the argument to end, Lewis decided to take action. He admitted to grabbing her, describing the act as placing his left arm around her neck and supporting the top of her head with his right hand, subsequently applying pressure to her neck. When asked about the duration of this hold, Lewis said that, "I don't know. All I just felt was anger, and I was still talking to her, so I don't know how long." But he remembered that during this encounter, Zaiylah attempted to resist by slapping his arm and was unable to speak until she ceased moving. While confessing to the act, Lewis repeatedly emphasized that he'd never intended to take her life and never meant to harm her. In his account, Lewis admitted that panic overtook him following the incident. After realizing that Zaiylah no longer showed signs of breathing or had a pulse, he experienced a sense of panic. In a state of distress, he retrieved a blanket from Zaylah's bedroom and used it to wrap her lifeless body. He then carried her, enveloped in the blanket, to his vehicle and placed her in the trunk. This was also captured on security cameras at 10:24 a.m., with Lewis seen carrying the blanket-wrapped bundle and Zaylah's feet visibly dangling. While driving back to his own apartment, Lewis contacted his mother, who advised him to return home and contact the authorities. Following her counsel, Lewis left Zaylah's apartment, driving back to his own residence. However, before reaching his home, he returned to her apartment to retrieve a beanie-style hat that he'd left behind. Only after this did he return to his apartment and make the distressing call to 911. Lewis also addressed the presence of an axe and shovel in the trunk of his vehicle alongside Zaylah's body. He explained that he'd purchased these items a few months earlier and had been storing them there for unrelated reasons. Although Alexander Lewis had confessed to the murder of his girlfriend and provided a detailed timeline, one thing didn't match: his reasoning for the killing. He claimed he didn't mean to harm Zaiylah and that rage overtook him. However, web searches on his phone told a different story. Detectives obtained a search warrant for Lewis's black Samsung cellular phone on August 28, 2023, and uncovered disturbing web searches. On the evening of August 25, 2023, Lewis had conducted several web searches related to stun guns, lethal weapons, and weapons that can kill. Furthermore, at 8:02 a.m. on August 26, 2023, just 10 minutes before Zaiylah was last seen on the apartment's surveillance system, he searched for chokehold. As the investigation continued, additional web searches pointed to even more alarming topics. At 8:51 and 8:52 a.m., Lewis conducted searches related to snapping necks after multiple searches regarding abortion. Finally, at 10:57 a.m., web searches resumed, this time focused on the topic of murder, with the last search recorded at 11:06 a.m. These findings cast doubt on Lewis's initial claims and raised serious questions about his intentions that fateful morning. The detectives' investigation led them to a chilling theory. They believed that Lewis, fearing the responsibilities of impending fatherhood and the challenges it presented to their already unstable relationship, took a horrifying and tragic step to eliminate what he saw as a problem. Sadly, his selfish act didn't just end one life. It led to the destruction of 3. Zaylah's promising life was tragically cut short, while Lewis now faces a lifetime behind bars, and their baby boy will never see the light of day. Alexander Lewis is facing capital murder charges and is currently held at the Sedgwick County Jail on a $500,000 bond. Tragic incidents like this one inevitably leave a profound impact on the affected families. Zaiylah Bronson's family is now burdened with unanswered questions and the unbearable pain of losing their beloved daughter. Zaiylah Bronson, Zaylah's mother, can't help but wonder if she failed to recognize signs that something was wrong.
We were close, but like I say, obviously not close enough because I don't know what led to this, what was the sign.
Meanwhile, her godmother, Dawn Wilson, who herself is a survivor of domestic violence, is left questioning why Zaiylah didn't have the opportunity to seek help before it was too late.
Not everybody make it out. And to see my baby girl not make it out is just like, what? How did we miss the signs?
These questions are a heartbreaking reminder of the devastation that domestic violence inflicts on both the victims and their loved ones. Dawn took it upon herself to start a GoFundMe campaign to help cover the funeral expenses, shedding light on the heartbreaking consequences of domestic violence. Despite the immense grief, the family planned a beautiful homecoming service to celebrate Zaylah's vibrant and outgoing personality. Dawn highlighted the challenging contrast between planning a baby shower for someone so young and arranging a funeral. She also expressed her belief that Zaiylah may have already forgiven her killer, underscoring the difficult path to healing for survivors of domestic violence. In response to this tragedy, the Wichita Police Department has taken steps to provide resources and support for domestic violence victims, encouraging them to seek assistance. This case has brought to the forefront the pressing issue of domestic violence in the city, as evidenced by a 60% increase in women seeking shelter from their abusers over the past year, as reported by the Wichita Family Crisis Center. These statistics reveal a disturbing trend to such incidents in the region. However, the problem of domestic violence is not confined to Wichita alone. Research indicates that homicide is the leading cause of death for pregnant women in the United States. Shockingly, pregnant women in the U.S. are more than twice as likely to be murdered during pregnancy or shortly after childbirth than they are to die from the primary medical causes of maternal death associated with childbirth. The number is even higher when it comes to African American women. It raises a critical question. How can we ensure the safety and well-being of women in such dire situations? As we conclude this case, what do you believe was the true reason behind Alexander Lewis committing this murder? And what measures should be taken to ensure the safety of those who are experiencing domestic abuse? We invite you to share your insights and perspectives on this matter, as your input is invaluable to addressing this issue. We strongly encourage those enduring such circumstances to reach out for assistance and support. If you're aware of someone else going through a similar situation, reporting it is crucial. Furthermore, if you have a case you'd like us to cover or any recommendations, please feel free to share them in the comment section below. On March 15, 2023, a chilling tale unfolded amid the majestic Rocky Mountains in Denver, Colorado. At 11:10 a.m., 43-year-old mother of 6 Angela Craig arrived at the hospital plagued by a debilitating headache and nausea. Despite the doctor's best efforts, her condition worsened, and around 2 p.m., she suffered a severe seizure and was put on life support. Throughout this harrowing ordeal, her devoted husband, James Craig, stood faithfully by her side, offering care and support. However, doctors were baffled by this strange and sudden illness and couldn't pinpoint a cause. Once the police stepped in, unexpected and shocking revelations began to emerge, leaving the community reeling. What could have caused Angela's sudden illness? And why were medical professionals unable to diagnose it in time? Born on April 15, 1975 in Dodge City, Kansas, Angela Dawn Craig was the cherished baby girl in a bustling family of 10 kids. Funny, witty, and intelligent, Angela had a knack for striking up engaging conversations with anyone she met. Despite her allergies, she was an animal lover to her core and also enjoyed reading and woodworking. As a student of interior design, she found beauty in the art of living spaces. But Angela's biggest priority in her life was her family. She shared close relationships with all her siblings and was ever ready to help both friends and strangers. Later in life, she found her calling as a family history consultant, using genealogy to help others trace back and reconnect with distant relations. Angela was also actively involved in church, taking on various roles like choir director, teacher, and youth organization leader. On December 18, 1999, Angela tied the knot with James Toliver Craig, a man with big dreams of becoming a doctor. These dreams were realized in 2006 when he earned his doctorate in dental surgery from the University of Missouri, Kansas City. While at the university, he helped establish the International Dental Student Program, supporting foreign-born dentists to get licensed in the U.S. In October 2006, James began practicing at the Summerbrook Dental Clinic in Aurora, Colorado. Over the course of 23 years, Angela and James welcomed 6 beautiful children into their family and chose to call Denver, Colorado their home. Known as the Mile High City due to its elevation, Denver has a population of nearly 400,000 residents who are known for their warm hospitality and love of the outdoors. Through all these years, Angela maintained close bonds with her siblings, especially with her sister Toni living in Utah. They managed to bridge the physical distance between them by talking on the phone every day and taking many memorable trips together. With James's profession as a dentist and Angela's involvement in the local community, the Craigs appeared to be a close-knit and genuinely happy family of 8. However, the family's fortunes took a drastic turn on March 15, 2023. At 11 a.m., Angela arrived at the UC Health University of Colorado Hospital, complaining of a debilitating headache, dizziness, and nausea. James rushed to be by her side, providing care and support throughout the terrifying ordeal. But despite the doctor's best efforts, things got worse when around 2 p.m., Angela experienced a severe seizure. The doctors took immediate action and put her on life support, while her concerned family grappled for answers. This wasn't the first time Angela had been to the hospital. In fact, this was her 3rd visit in 10 days. Her symptoms each time were the same: headache, nausea, and dizziness, yet no one could find a cause. This time, however, her condition was alarmingly serious and baffled all the doctors and nurses. While Angela battled for life, 2 important visitors arrived at the hospital: Ryan Redfern and his wife, Michelle Redfern. Ryan, a fellow dentist, had been James's friend for 20 years since the pair had been through college together. On top of that, Ryan was also a financial partner in James's business at Summerbrook Dental Group. Following James's financial struggles and near bankruptcy in 2021, Ryan had stepped in to save the dental practice in August 2022. Ryan's wife, Michelle, held a PhD in nursing and had known of Angela's recent health issues. The couple shared a close friendship with James and Angela and wanted to support them through this tough time. Their friendship reflected a genuine care for one another's well-being. Angela's health struggles and strange symptoms had begun on March 5, 2023, when she returned home after visiting her sister Toni in Utah. Angela had felt sick and nauseous. Worried about her health, she decided to go for a checkup on March 6, 2023. Surprisingly, doctors didn't find anything concerning in Angela's reports, so they prescribed some standard medicines and advised her to get more rest. However, on March 9, 2023, Angela found herself back at the hospital again, and this time, Michelle found out about it. Given her background in healthcare, Michelle was understandably concerned for her friend. She couldn't help but wonder if the doctors might have missed something in Angela's previous visits, so she asked James to keep her updated on Angela's symptoms. On March 9th, when Angela was hospitalized, Michelle sent James a text at 3 p.m. inquiring if he needed any assistance. James, who was in the hospital room with Angela at the time, promptly replied, "Thanks for offering, but for now, I think we've got more than we can handle." This was the start of a pivotal conversation that would play a crucial role in Angela's health journey. The following day, on March 10, 2023, at 6:14 p.m., Michelle reached out to James again. She was eager to know if there had been any progress in Angela's diagnosis. She also wanted to check if there was anything she could do to help. James responded, "Thanks, Michelle. It's been pretty rough not having any answers. I got pretty nervous because they did so many tests. They've done 4 or 5 different blood draws, and the regular blood panels all came back okay, and she's negative for autoimmune disorders and negative for diabetes. The main issue they seem to be concerned about right now is blood pressure. They dumped 5 liters into her IV over 24 hours, and she looks super puffy and swollen, but her blood pressure is barely 100/60. Yesterday morning, it was 56/44. My main concern is just how she's feeling. Really pretty crappy. They're going to keep her 1 more night, and hopefully she can come home tomorrow sometime." Over the next few days, Michelle continued to inquire about Angela's health, showing her unwavering support. James shared that the doctors had conducted several tests, including an MRI due to a family history of brain tumors, as well as ultrasounds and CT scans of her head, chest, and abdomen. Strangely, all these tests returned normal results, and nothing appeared to be medically wrong. With no clear answers, Angela was eventually allowed to return home. But a perplexing question remained. If all the medical reports showed Angela as perfectly normal, why was her health deteriorating day by day? Unfortunately, on March 15, 2023, Angela's health took another sharp dip, and this time her symptoms were more severe as she grappled with a dizzying headache, nausea, and stomach pains. Unable to reach James, who was at his clinic, she called her brother for help. He rushed her to the hospital, where Angela was admitted around 11 a.m. When James received the alarming news, he hurried to be by his wife's side. In the midst of this worrying situation, he contacted Michelle to share the distressing news. He even sent Michelle 2 photos of Angela in her hospital room, surrounded by a team of medical professionals. When Angela had a stroke and became mentally unresponsive, Michelle and her husband Ryan decided to go to the hospital, feeling deeply concerned for their friend. They texted James, letting him know that they were on their way to offer support during this uncertain time. As Michelle and Ryan were separately heading to the hospital, Ryan's phone rang, delivering troubling news from James's dental practice. The caller was Caitlin, a relatively new office manager at Summerbrook Dental Group. Caitlin had noticed some peculiar occurrences that raised unsettling questions about Angela's health. Caitlin shared an incident with Ryan which had happened on March 6, 2023. She'd been working late at the dental office, and it was nearly closing time when James showed up unexpectedly despite having no patients scheduled. What made it even more unusual was that instead of heading to his own office, he went all the way down the hall and started using the computer in the examination room. This raised eyebrows because James preferred using his own computer in his office, and this sudden departure from normal routine was odd. 30 minutes after Caitlin left the office, her phone buzzed with a text from James. In that message, James revealed that he was expecting a personal package to be delivered to the office. He asked Caitlin to ensure that she received it and emphasized that no one else should open it. On March 13, 2023, the long-awaited package James had mentioned finally arrived. However, when Caitlin reached to collect it, she found that another colleague had already opened it. Concerned about James's confidentiality request, Caitlin decided to reseal the package and personally deliver it to James at the office. And it was while repackaging the contents that something strange caught her eye, a biohazard sticker. It was stuck to a cylindrical container with the words potassium cyanide written on the label. Caitlin assumed the chemical might have some medical or dental use she wasn't familiar with, so she sealed the box back up and promptly handed it over to James. Later that same day, Caitlin spotted James leaving the office, clutching the cylindrical canister wrapped in brown paper. This time, her suspicions grew stronger. Why was James taking the potassium cyanide home? Curious, Caitlin turned to Google to look up what potassium cyanide was used for. And it was then that she stumbled upon a startling revelation. The side effects of ingesting potassium cyanide were alarmingly similar to the symptoms that Angela had been enduring, such as nausea, vomiting, and low blood pressure. By the time Ryan reached the hospital, he was in shock at what Caitlin told him. He met up with Michelle, and together they went to see Angela, who was by then on life support. Wasting no time, Ryan approached one of the attending nurses and voiced his suspicion that Angela might have been poisoned by James with potassium cyanide. The nurse, though bewildered by this unexpected information, still took it seriously and agreed to conduct a fresh set of tests on Angela. Recognizing the gravity of the allegation, she also dialed 911 to alert the police. As James stepped outside to take a call, Ryan and Michelle decided to head home. But their journey was interrupted by an agitated phone call from James, who wanted to know why the hospital staff were suspecting him of poisoning his wife. Ryan didn't hold back. He was direct and candid with James, revealing that he knew about the mysterious package that had been delivered at the dental office and its ominous contents. He confronted James directly, demanding to know why he'd purchased potassium cyanide. Caught in a tight spot, James finally admitted that he had indeed ordered the chemical, but claimed that he'd acted at Angela's request, never imagining she would actually use it. When the phone call had ended, James sent Ryan a text message, urgently pleading with him not to share their conversation with anyone else, especially not with law enforcement. "You'll do more damage than good to my family by continuing to insert yourself into this. I understand why you did what you did, and I do get it. But if you'd come to me personally, man to man, instead of talking to everyone else about what you thought you knew, I might have let you in on some details that would have made you less likely to cause this horrible storm. I'm very, very mad at you." But Ryan couldn't shake off his suspicions, and he believed that there was more to Angela's deteriorating health. So he made a crucial decision and called the police, sharing everything he knew about the situation and urging them to investigate further. Later that night, well past midnight, the police arrived at the hospital to discuss Angela's grim prognosis. She remained on life support with no brain activity. The police wasted no time. The next day, on March 16, 2023, they headed straight to Summerbrook Dental Group to speak with Caitlin, the office manager. It was then that the veil of secrecy began to lift. Caitlin revealed that on the morning of March 6, 2023, before Angela had first visited the hospital, James had prepared a pre-workout protein shake for Angela. He'd proudly boasted about it at the office, portraying himself as a doting husband. However, things took a sinister turn when Angela suddenly felt dizzy, and from that point on, her health took a downward spiral. Caitlin also didn't hold back about the mysterious package and her suspicions regarding potassium cyanide. She explained how this deadly chemical could produce the same symptoms Angela was experiencing, and in some cases could even be fatal. Ryan, who had arrived at the dental clinic to join the discussion, added more layers to the story which shattered the illusion of the seemingly happy Craig family. He revealed that in 2021, as James grappled with financial woes and the threat of bankruptcy, he'd confided in Ryan about his troubled marriage. Shockingly, James had been contemplating a divorce at that time. Even more distressing was when James later claimed that Angela had made several attempts at taking her own life throughout 2022 by overdosing on medication, but James's interventions had saved her. According to Ryan, James had alleged that Angela's attempts at self-harm became more pronounced when he asked her for a divorce in December 2022. However, despite these claims, James had never reported any of these incidents to the authorities. Neither had he sought medical attention or professional help for her mental struggles. This pattern of secrecy and neglect raised serious questions about his story. To uncover the truth about Angela's mental health, the police turned to her 6 children. However, the children painted a different picture, saying they'd never witnessed any such behavior from their mother and that she was happy and full of energy. It was a baffling contradiction, adding more layers to the mystery. It was evident that James might have been crafting a cover-up story to explain Angela's deteriorating health. With suspicions mounting, the police launched a full investigation into James. They secured 2 search warrants, one for the Craig residence and another for the dental office. They also decided to scrutinize James's phone records and text conversations with Angela, dating back to March 6, 2023, when Angela first fell ill. Thank you so much for making my coffee this morning. I just love you. I hope you have a great day, and I'm so glad you're back in town. You're welcome, baby. I love you too. I think my body's not letting in the caffeine this morning either. My stomach feels fine, but my head feels funny and dizzy. Very strange. It's okay, it'll wear off. I'm dizzy and my eyes don't want to focus, but I can get the stuff done. I don't feel right in my head. Do I need to come home? No, this is just weird. I'm dizzy in my head and my eyes are working slowly and my body is responding slowly. Do we have a blood pressure cuff? You should try and see if your blood pressure is low or something. Do you get lightheaded when you stand up? It feels more like when I take heavy medicines and everything adjusts and moves slowly like I'm moving in thick gel. My eyes are struggling to stay focused. It was at this point that the text messages took an odd turn, as James alluded to some event in their past that might be triggering to Angela. I have a bottle of magnesium in my second drawer down on the left side of my sink. Take one of those. Have you eaten anything? I had my protein shake and magnesium makes me weird. I feel drugged. Given our history, I know that must be triggering. Just for the record, I didn't drug you, though you looked really pale before I left. Sometime after this strange exchange, James texted Angela again. I was plugging your symptoms into Google, and stroke matches some of what you're describing. Do you have weakness in your whole body, or just on one side? And is it both eyes or just one? I feel like it's my whole body, and it's tingly. Andy, my eyes are struggling to focus. My whole body feels so heavy. The investigation took a significant turn when police decided to delve into James's computer. they uncovered 2 email accounts associated with him. As they sifted through the search history linked to James's email, they found alarming signs about his involvement in Angela's deteriorating health. In February, just a month before Angela was admitted to the hospital, James had been looking up topics like how many grams of pure arsenic is needed to kill a human, and is arsenic detectable in autopsy? James had also searched for chemical suppliers in the city. All these inquiries raised red flags. During their investigation, the police stumbled upon an Amazon purchase made by James for a product labeled arsenic metal 99.9999% crystalline metalloid. The product description explicitly stated that ingesting this chemical could be fatal. Digging deeper into James's online activities, they uncovered concerning YouTube videos he'd watched. One of them was titled Top 5 Undetectable Poisons That Show No Signs of Foul Play, which provided instructions on creating plant-based poisons. This was followed by 3 more searches related to making poison at home, specifically from plants. As if that wasn't unsettling enough, they found a video that delved into the details of cyanide and arsenic, describing the symptoms of ingesting these deadly substances and highlighting the challenges doctors faced in detecting them. But the most damning evidence came in the form of an order placed with Midland Scientific for an item labeled Sigma 207-810-25G, which turned out to be a technical term for potassium cyanide. Finally, the pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place. Clearly, James was poisoning Angela from the start. But why would someone poison their wife and the loving mother of their children? Did seeking a divorce drive him to take such a terrible step? As investigators searched for answers and interviewed the couple's friends and family, Angela's sister Toni shared valuable insights. Toni revealed that only those closest to Angela knew the truth about her relationship with James, which was far from the loving facade they displayed to the world. Toni revealed that James had a history of extramarital affairs with multiple women. More shockingly, he confessed to Angela about his addiction to explicit online material since his teenage years. However, a disturbing incident from 5 or 6 years ago particularly stood out for the police. Toni said that Angela had shared her fear that James had deliberately drugged her on one occasion. James had apparently intended to end his own life through lethal injection in their bathroom and had drugged Angela to prevent her from intervening. This incident shed light on the strange text messages between James and Angela, but the police were skeptical of James's bizarre explanation for drugging Angela. It made no sense that James would want to take his own life in such a perplexing fashion. Toni also revealed that Angela had longed to break free from her marriage with James, a statement she'd shared repeatedly over the past 16 years. However, each time she summoned the courage to plan her departure, James would skillfully persuade her to remain. The tension wasn't limited to their relationship. It extended to his dental office, which was drowning in financial woes. Adding to the complex mess, James had decided to try his luck in Las Vegas, gambling away over $2,000 despite being in a crushing debt of $2 million. It was clear to the police that despite their picture-perfect exterior, Angela and James's marriage had been filled with turmoil. Investigators stumbled upon even more troubling evidence when they found emails detailing recent round-trip travel plans from Austin, Texas to Denver, Colorado. These flights were scheduled for 2 separate occasions, March 8th through March 10th, and again from March 16th through March 20th. These tickets were booked for Karen Kane, a female orthodontist based in Texas. The emails between Karen and James were not mere professional correspondences. They were of a much more intimate nature. Karen herself had filed for divorce in 2022 and was in a relationship with James, a fact completely unknown to Angela. Further investigation uncovered that the flights had been purchased on March 4th, 2023, the same day the arsenic was delivered to James's residence. This suggested a calculated plan by James to be with Karen. On March 16th, Karen had sent James an email with the subject line, "Seeing you," and the content of the email read, "Hi honey, I'm so sorry for what's transpired this week in your world. I'm sorry I'm not part of your world to be more of a help to you, and instead I'm pulling away. This is so hard. I want to be and do whatever I can to support and encourage you, and I don't want to add to what's become an incredibly difficult time. I can't imagine what it's doing to you to walk your kids through. I do want to give you any comfort I can, but I don't feel it's right for me to mix in with all of those gatherings. I don't want to meet your family as a friend and try to conceal what I feel. I'm praying for you and seeking God's wisdom for this time. I love you. While the police were doing their best to gather evidence against James, staff at the hospital tried everything to save Angela. Unfortunately, on March 18th at 4:29 p.m., Angela was declared brain dead. She passed away without ever knowing the truth and what her husband had been plotting. Angela's sister Toni made a heartfelt plea to James to allow an autopsy to better understand Angela's sudden decline and death. However, James refused, claiming there was no need to investigate further now that she was gone. This refusal left many wondering if James was afraid what an autopsy might reveal, like the presence of arsenic in Angela's body. Hours after Angela was taken off life support, James was officially charged with premeditated first-degree murder. He didn't have much time to contemplate his situation because the next day, on March 19th, he was arrested. A few days later, he found himself in a Colorado courtroom for his first appearance as the charges against him were read aloud. In that room, a mix of friends, family, and even some of James and Angela's children watched as the charges against him were read out. The disheveled, handcuffed 45-year-old in an orange jumpsuit was a stark contrast to the smiling blonde man in the family photos. It was hard to reconcile this image with the adulterer and murderer described by the prosecution. James Craig, already faced with a grave first-degree murder charge, was charged with a second count, the attempt to tamper with physical evidence. The judge set his bond at a staggering $10 million. James's trial is set for 2023, but no further information has since been released. The case is expected to unravel with surprising twists and turns, keeping everyone on the edge as the truth gradually emerges. A week later, new information emerged that Angela had not one, but 3 life insurance policies in her name. While we can't say for certain, it raises the chilling possibility that cashing in on those life insurance policies might have been part of James's dark plan alongside his affair. Now, Angela's 6 children are faced with the heart-wrenching reality of coping with the loss of their mother while their father goes on trial for murder. Angela's children had always been her pride and joy, and in the wake of James's arrest and incarceration, Angela's family has stepped forward to care for the kids. They've made it abundantly clear that this tragedy was solely James's fault, and the extended Craig family should not be held accountable for his terrible actions. In Angela's obituary, her family and loved ones tried to capture the essence of her life, looking beyond the tragedy of her untimely passing. When Angela was declared brain dead, her family made the courageous decision to donate some of her organs. While they couldn't save her, they take bittersweet comfort in knowing that her legacy lives on through the lives she helped save. They fondly remembered her warm and infectious smile that could brighten anyone's day and spoke of her unwavering devotion toward her family. And tragically, they noted her loyalty to the very man who now stands accused of her murder. It's a poignant tribute to a life that was taken far too soon. What are your thoughts on this case? What do you think could be the possible motive behind Angela's death? Was it really only to get a divorce? Or did life insurance money play the main role?
No one could have imagined that the Duke family's outing on August 10, 1996, from their home in Green River, Wyoming, would end in a horrific tragedy. That fateful afternoon, 22-year-old Liana Duke and her 5-year-old son Eric slipped and fell to their deaths from a 200-foot cliff in Sweetwater County, Wyoming. They left behind a grieving husband and father, Mr. James Robert Bob Duke. Unable to reach them, he called the authorities, hoping they could be saved. But by the time the officers got there, it was already too late. As more officials arrived at the gruesome scene, they tried to figure out what caused the deaths on the cliff and whether this was an accident or there was something more to it. There was one particular detective, Detective Mont Meacham, who strongly believed that the deaths of Liana Duke and her son weren't accidental, and to prove it, he'd have to answer these 2 questions. Who would want to kill the young mother and her child? And what could they possibly gain from their deaths? Our case begins in Green River, Wyoming. This beautiful river town is full of scenic beauty, as there's diverse wildlife and majestic cliffs as far as the eye can see. This small town only has 11,825 residents, and it's the county seat of Sweetwater County. The people of the peaceful town love to hunt, fish, and view wildlife. In their small community, they know each other well, and it was in this town that our story began. Liana Mae Davidson was born to Ralph Wayne Davidson and Rosalie West Davidson on January 4, 1974. Liana was a very reserved and shy child growing up. She was also intelligent. Her school records showed that she was a straight-A student. She eventually grew to become a beautiful young woman with long brown hair, and she kept studying hard as she dreamt of finishing high school and going to college. However, those dreams would be put on hold when she crossed paths with Robert Bob Duke. Liana was 17 at the time, and it didn't take long for the pair to start dating, and they were soon inseparable. Like most other teenagers in love, Liana thought that nothing could ruin their perfect relationship. But reality soon hit hard as Liana got pregnant at the young age of 17. Terrified, Liana didn't know how to tell her parents, both of whom were Mormon. But the truth eventually came out, and there was pressure from both Liana's and Bob's parents for the couple to do the right thing. So, after their high school graduation on May 25, 1991, Liana and Bob got married. It was a happy day for everyone. They'd both just graduated, and even though she wasn't going to college anymore, Liana had already come to terms with the baby she was expecting and everything that came along with it. It wasn't long after their marriage that the couple welcomed their son, Eric Robert Duke, on August 8, 1991. Even at her young age, Liana handled motherhood perfectly well. She was a loving wife and a very protective mother. She looked after Eric in their home whenever Bob went to work. She also grew fond of crafts, as whenever she had free time on her hands, she would make and fill the house with homemade crafts, knickknacks, and wreaths. Liana loved making things so much that she dreamed of opening a craft shop one day. Everything was perfect for their little family, but there was one thing that bothered Liana, and it was her husband's best friend, a man named Roger Brauberger. They had all gone to high school together as Roger met Bob in the 7th grade, and they'd been best friends ever since. Roger was a drug dealer, and Liana had a strong stance against drugs, so she didn't like her husband's friendship with him. She often told Bob that she didn't approve of Roger and that he should part ways with him. She feared that Roger, who had numerous drug-dealing friends and was also an overly rough individual, would be a bad influence on her husband. But no matter how much she complained, Bob didn't listen, and he remained friends with Roger. Liana soon realized that she couldn't do anything about their relationship, so she eventually dropped the matter and let the friendship be. The years passed quickly for the family, and they were soon celebrating little Eric's 5th birthday. A few days after the celebration, the couple planned a family outing for August 10, 1996. They were going to visit the bay along the river and make popcorn. But, unbeknownst to them, the fun family trip they were going on would soon lead to a tragedy. Lieutenant Kevin Alvesteffer from the Sweetwater County Sheriff's Department was on patrol on August 10, 1996, when he received a message from dispatch informing him that a male subject had just called 911, saying his wife and child had fallen off a cliff. He was told that the 911 call came from a dusty trail that led through the open desert and went up to the head of a cliff. The place was called Lost Dog Road, and the officer speedily responded to the 911 call. By the time Lieutenant Alvesteffer got to the cliff, he was met with a horrific sight. Lying at the base of the cliff were Liana and her son Eric. Their now disfigured and battered bodies were crumpled and folded over the rocks in a morbid manner. Lieutenant Alvesteffer would later recall his initial reaction to the scene, saying, "I didn't realize there was a cliff in that area of such magnitude. I thought the wife and child had fallen off, perhaps a 15 to 20-foot cliff, and were injured. But no. It was a towering ridge, and they had plunged all the way down, 200 feet, to the rocks below. And at the top, I saw the young husband and father of the victims, the then 23-year-old Bob Duke." As the other first responders and detectives made their way to the scene, Lieutenant Alvesteffer asked Bob what happened at the cliff. Bob then recounted the events of the accident, telling the lieutenant that he and his family had all gone out for a drive and had visited several locations before arriving at this particular one. They then stopped on a ridge overlooking the Flaming Gorge Reservoir. While they were there, the family got out of the Jeep, and Eric had started throwing rocks and chasing lizards with his mother by his side. Bob then went to the car to get a soda, but, as his back was turned, he heard his wife scream out his name, and when he turned around, Eric and his mother were gone. As Bob talked, Lieutenant Alvesteffer noticed how he was very quiet and reserved as he recounted the tragic incident. He also had a calm demeanor and didn't look shocked. Bob's behavior raised a little suspicion, as the lieutenant thought a man who had just lost his wife and child would look a little more devastated. He then reminded himself that people process shock and grief in different ways, so that could explain Bob Duke's calm reaction. Bob then told the lieutenant that the terrain was too steep, so he couldn't go down there and check if they were still alive, but he was able to hear the sound of his child choking on blood. The first responders had already arrived at this point, and they made their way to the bodies. Lieutenant Alvesteffer noticed how easily the first responders made their way down the cliff after Bob claimed it was too hard for him. A lot of questions ran through the lieutenant's mind as he wondered why Bob, who said he'd never been to the cliff before, chose to park at a very risky and unsafe place. A lot of things weren't adding up for the lieutenant, and he hoped an investigation would make things clearer. When all the questions had been asked, the first responders were able to retrieve and lift Liana and Eric's bodies up the cliff. Instinctively, Lieutenant Alvesteffer looked at Bob to see what he'd do. This was an old habit the lieutenant picked up from years of experience at crime scenes, as he wanted to see how Bob would react to the bodies of his wife and child. But not once did he reach out to them or try to hold them as people in grief often did. He just let them be taken away. The tragic news quickly spread through the small town of Green River, and as grief filled the streets, the detectives started their investigation. Detectives started questioning the victim's family and friends, including the grieving husband Bob. Despite the townspeople and officers believing Bob had nothing to do with the deaths of his wife and child, the detectives remained skeptical as they weren't ruling anyone out until the investigation was over. However, as the investigation went on, no incriminating evidence was uncovered. The autopsy reports also pointed to death by falling, and there were no signs of foul play. With no new information, the case went cold, and most of the detectives started to believe the slip and fall story, as there was no other feasible explanation for their deaths. A little while after that, Bob was no longer under suspicion, and even though a few detectives still had other theories, the sheriff's department ruled their deaths as a terrible accident, and the case was closed. The funerals of Liana and Eric were held after the investigation was over. A lot of people were in attendance, including Bob, and he was one of the pallbearers who carried Eric's coffin. They were buried next to each other on a hill that overlooked the town, and everyone took pity on and offered their sympathies to the young widower. In 1998, after the loss of his wife and child, Bob moved to Austin, Texas to stay with his brother Mike and to move on with his life. By January 1999, it had been about 2.5 years since the deaths of Liana and Eric Duke, but their case was still poking at the mind of a particular detective, and his name was Detective Mont Meacham. He'd already pleaded with the sheriff's department to take another look at the case, even though it was out of his jurisdiction, but they told him the case had been closed. He knew something wasn't right with the case, as he didn't buy the tragic accident story that the other investigators and the entire town had believed. Many details concerning the case were questionable, and while he knew something felt fishy, he just couldn't put his finger on it. These unanswered questions would continue to disturb Detective Meacham, but 2.5 years after the case had been dismissed, he finally received the answer he was looking for. On January 4, 1999, Detective Meacham received a panicked call from Roger Brauberger. Roger was terrified as he kept rambling the words, "They'll kill me, they'll kill me." Meacham tried asking Roger who was going to kill him, but he didn't get a definite answer. Meacham then managed to calm Roger down before he said, "I need to talk to you as soon as I can. I've got something super scary to tell you." So Detective Meacham got in his car and drove to the construction site where Roger worked. Once he arrived, Roger got in the police car and told Detective Meacham a very disturbing story. Roger said his old friend Bob Duke had been calling him from Houston. At first, it was just small talk about work and what he and his brother Mike were up to. But their conversation soon turned ugly. Bob wanted to know if Roger would get him an automatic weapon since he was working in a security high-rise. Apparently, there were people who wanted certain individuals dead, and Bob could make money from it. Roger assumed Bob had called him for the favor because he knew his drug dealer friends had connections and could get him the guns. Roger said that even though he didn't want anything to do with Bob's request, he had gone along with it. Meacham listened carefully as the frightened Roger took a short pause before he continued to recount the strange conversations. He told the detective that Bob had called him a few weeks later with an even more disturbing request. Bob mentioned he had gone through the $60,000 of insurance money from his wife and child's deaths, and that he and his brother Mike had a plan to make a lot of money fast. They then told Roger that he could help. Roger was unsure about their intentions, but he reluctantly agreed and asked about their plan. That's when Bob stated he would pay Roger $20,000 to kill his parents. Confused and taken aback, Roger asked Bob to repeat himself. He then told Roger that his parents were going to die whether Roger was involved or not. Bob then added that he understood Roger's financial needs, which is why he offered him the opportunity first. It was at that moment that Roger realized the seriousness of the situation. Bob had already killed his wife and child and was now plotting to kill his own parents. Shocked, Detective Meacham, whose ears had perked up at Roger's last statement, looked at him and said, "How do you know he killed his wife and child?" That's when Roger decided to tell Detective Meacham the details of another disturbing conversation he had with his friend Bob on July 21, 1996. Roger recalled their conversation in vivid detail, telling the detective that he had been hanging out with Bob, watching movies and talking. During this, Bob suddenly turned to him and said, "Would you kill my wife and child for $15,000? Roger thought Bob was joking, so he laughed it off and told him he'd been watching too many movies. But Bob was dead serious, and a few days later, Bob came to Roger with a detailed plan that he'd laid out. Bob then explained the plan, saying, "Have you given any thought to that? Well, how about $20,000? I'll be barbecuing this Wednesday. I'll leave the rifle behind the shed, and you can shoot me in the arm, shoot my wife and kid in the head and chest, and then take out as many neighborhood kids as you need to make it look not so obvious." Horrified, Roger told Bob he was nuts and that this plan was crazy. Bob kept trying to convince his friend as he assured Roger that he would pay him with the insurance money he got for their deaths. Roger then told Bob that if he was unhappy, he should get a divorce. But Bob told Roger that he couldn't do that because his parents would hate him. They stopped talking about it after that day, and Roger assumed that was the end of it. But 3 weeks later, Liana and Eric were dead. Stunned, Detective Meacham blinked in disbelief at Roger's story. The person he'd been trying to pin down for nearly 3 years had been under his nose this whole time. So, without any hesitation, he started an in-depth investigation into Bob Duke. James Robert Duke was born in 1973 to school teachers Larry and Roberta Duke. He'd grown up with an older brother named Mike Duke, and they lived in a little red house on Bridger Street in Green River. He was a smart and serious kid who excelled at school, but in the 7th grade, he got into a schoolyard fight with Roger Brauberger, and they became best friends after that. The boys used to take Bob's truck off-roading as they chased girls, drank beer, and hunted rabbits. They also enjoyed sitting at home and watching murder-for-hire movies while joking about becoming hitmen themselves. Even though he messed around with Roger, Bob was still a focused and ambitious student who always talked about going off to college after high school and leaving Green River behind. When Bob fell in love with Liana Davidson and got her pregnant in high school, his hopes of having a life outside of Green River were put on hold. To provide for his new family, Bob started working as a professional carpet layer, and he eventually built a reputation as one of the best in Sweetwater County. He was often described as a diligent and hard-working man, a good husband, and a good father. However, Bob soon started to feel trapped in his marriage, and he began looking for a way out. It was around this time that he asked Roger to kill his family for $20,000, And when Roger refused, Bob took matters into his own hands as his wife and child mysteriously died in an accident 3 weeks later. After Roger's statements, Detective Meacham got the FBI involved. With the help of Roger and Meacham, FBI agent Todd Scott managed to get an incriminating call recorded where Bob could be heard planning to kill his parents with a .22 caliber gun so as to cash in on their life insurance. On January 8, 1999, 25-year-old Robert Duke was arrested at his home in Houston, and his 31-year-old brother Patrick Mike Duke was arrested minutes later at a business office. The incriminating evidence allowed the FBI to quickly wrap up the case, and the brothers, who wanted to spare their parents the anguish of a trial, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder. Bob Duke was sentenced to 10 years, and Mike Duke was sentenced to 21 months. The news took the entire town of Green River by shock, and Agent Scott wondered how he could tell Larry and Roberta Duke that their only children had been plotting to kill them. Their parents refused to believe the FBI, as they said their sons were good boys who had been wrongly accused. But while the brothers were serving their sentence, Detective Meacham reopened the case of Liana and Eric Duke and charged Bob Duke with their murder. James Robert Duke's trial began on the 12th of August, 2002. Prosecutor Harold Moneyhun and Detective Meacham knew that the jury wouldn't believe the words of their main witness, Roger Brauberger, as he was a known drug dealer and drug user. So they had to work extra hard to convince the jury that Bob was guilty of the murders. Prosecutor Moneyhun started the trial by taking the jury to the cliff where he believed Bob pushed his family to their death 6 years ago. Moneyhun then told the jurors, "As you can see, it's not a picnic area. It's a murder weapon." The prosecutor told the court that Bob Duke intentionally took his wife and son to that cliff, which was located in an isolated area that was miles away from the nearest town, and pushed them over the edge of the cliff and made sure they were dead before notifying the authorities. He stated that this was how Robert had heard his son's dying breath, something which should not have been possible from the top of a 200-foot cliff. Roger was then called to the stand, where he testified against a man who was once his best friend. He recounted their conversations to the court, saying, "Bob said, 'I've done family before and I didn't like it. Would you be interested in killing my parents?'" As expected, defense lawyer Lavoy Taylor mocked Roger's testimony, saying, "It all sounds to me like a dreamed-up drug mind statement, and we know that Roger Brauberger was a drug peddler, a drug dealer, and a drug user." Taylor then told the jurors that prosecutor Moneyhun desperately wanted to get a conviction on a case with no eyewitnesses, so he had based his entire case on a witness who wasn't even there and had no credibility due to his criminal past. To counter her argument, prosecutor Moneyhun pointed out the incoherencies in Bob's recollection of the incident, telling the jurors that around May or June of 1998, he told a friend, Miss Dawn Gunter, that the cliff had given way, but he told officers that they had slipped. He then brought out Stephen Miller, a professor in botany and mycology at the University of Wyoming, who testified in court that after his examination of the cliff in 2000, no evidence existed that the area in question had crumbled or fallen away on August 10, 1996. He then told the court that the last time any disturbance occurred in that area was around 1960 to 1970. Moneyhun then emphasized how Bob claimed he couldn't get down the cliff, but the first responders had descended pretty easily. He felt this should put his credibility into question. Bob's calm and emotionless demeanor was also brought to the attention of the jury, as Moneyhun told the court that Bob didn't have the face of a grieving husband. Bob still maintained his innocence during the trial, telling the court that his family got lost and accidentally slipped. He also defended his demeanor, saying, "I'm sorry if my grief did not meet the expectations of the public." As the trial went on, the jurors heard numerous arguments from the prosecutors and the defense, and things were looking very grim for the prosecutors, who were finding it difficult to prove Bob's guilt. But that's when the star witness arrived, a woman named Crystal Robinson. Crystal was a woman Bob had started seeing 3 years into his marriage. He started an inappropriate relationship with her when she was just 13 years old, and he would take her to drink beer at the very same cliff where he killed his family. Crystal testified in court saying, "Bob always told me that he wanted out of his marriage, and when I asked him why he didn't just get a divorce, He always told me that he wanted to find a way out in which he did not have to pay child support. That was the nail in the coffin, as her testimony answered why Bob killed his family and what he gained from their deaths. On August 23, 2002, after 8 hours of deliberations, Bob was found guilty on all charges. And on September 25, 2002, James Robert Duke was sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of his family. When they heard the verdict, Ralph and Rose Davidson, Liana's parents, were clinging to each other, smiling through tears. And Ralph expressed his gratitude to Roger, saying, "Thank you. Thank you for coming forward and for doing the right thing." Bob is currently serving out his sentence at the Wyoming State Penitentiary at 2900 South Higley Boulevard in Rawlins, Wyoming. The twisted case of Bob Duke is proof that justice is always around the corner, as even if it took 6 years, justice was finally served in the end. But what do you think? Do you think Bob pushed his family that day? Or do you think he's truly innocent? Please share your thoughts with us in the comments section below.
Open your soul to the Lord and maybe ask for forgiveness there first, because you're on a spiral straight to hell.
Fairfield High School is just another ordinary school in Iowa, United States, with a less than impressive rating, given that the academic performance of its students hasn't exactly been stellar over the years. Nonetheless, despite not being widely recognized for its academic accomplishments, this school has become infamous for an entirely different and unsettling reason: a shocking murder. November 3, 2021 marked the day when this school was put under an unfortunate spotlight as the lifeless body of Nohema Graber, a 66-year-old Spanish teacher at the school, was discovered concealed beneath a tarp in Chautauqua Park, Iowa. The heinous nature of this act initially baffled investigators. However, before long, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Who could be responsible for this terrible crime? What might have driven someone to commit such a horrific act? Fairfield, Iowa, known for its serene lifestyle, combines a quaint small-town feel with modern comforts. This town has gained recognition as a center for mindfulness practices and holistic well-being. The community's focus on health and its picturesque setting make it an appealing choice for individuals seeking a retreat from urban complexities, aiming to embrace a more harmonious way of life. Despite its reputation as a meditation hub, Fairfield is not immune to disturbing crimes. The case of Nohema Graber is a stark reminder of this reality, that even peaceful towns like this have their share of unsettling incidents. Nohema Castillo's journey begins in Jalapa, Veracruz, Mexico, where she was born on November 10, 1954, to parents Noé Castillo Aguiar and Maria Concepcion Castillo. Following her school years, Nohema embarked on a 17-year career as a flight attendant with Mexicana de Aviación. Alongside this, she pursued studies to become a commercial airline pilot, breaking barriers as one of Mexico's first women trained to operate passenger jets. Nohema married Paul Graber on October 4, 1986, in Jalapa, Veracruz, Mexico, and changed her surname to Graber. In 1992, Nohema and Paul moved to Fairfield, where they raised their 3 children, Christian Graber, Jared Graber, and Nohema Marie Graber. She became an active participant in St. Mary Catholic Church and was a regular at the daily Mass. As their children matured, Nohema made the bold choice in her 50s to pursue a degree in English and earn a teaching certificate from Iowa Wesleyan University in nearby Mount Pleasant. Her inaugural position as a Spanish teacher was at Ottumwa High School, where she dedicated herself until 2012. Subsequently, she took the role of a Spanish teacher at Fairfield High School. Nohema's life centered on her students, family, faith, and community involvement. She had a routine of teaching, serving her parish, reading, and taking walks in Chautauqua Park. Despite her disciplined and compassionate life, tragedy awaited her as a teacher, leading her down an unforeseen path. In the halls of Fairfield High School, by late 2021, yet another season of exams had arrived. Nohema, the dedicated Spanish teacher, gave her all, hopeful that her students would achieve stellar grades. But just like any classroom, hers was a mix of triumphs and challenges, where some students soared while others fell short. As is customary, those who received less favorable grades expressed their frustrations, perhaps placing blame on their teacher. A typical tale, you might think. However, this year held a chilling departure from the norm. Amidst the routine, one student took their disappointment to a dangerous extreme. November 2nd, 2021 marked a day where the consequences of a few unfortunate grades unfolded. A student of Nohema's class sought a meeting with her to address his academic struggles. The content of their conversation remained undisclosed, but following their interaction at around 4 p.m., Nohema took her van to Chautauqua Park, the place where she often enjoyed her post-school walks. Following this, Nohema's van exited the park approximately 42 minutes after her arrival, with 2 males in the front seats. However, Nohema was notably absent from the vehicle. Later, her car was located at the end of a quiet country road near Fairfield. However, Nohema was nowhere to be found. Worried for her well-being, her family filed a missing persons report the next day on November 3, 2021. Soon after, on that very same day, she was located. Yet the circumstances of her discovery were far from what her husband, Paul Graber, had anticipated. Nohema's lifeless body was uncovered at Chautauqua Park. Her remains were hidden under a blanket, wheelbarrow, and railroad ties. Forensic examination later revealed that she'd suffered a fatal beating inflicted by a baseball bat to the head. The pursuit of the perpetrator began immediately, and within a mere 2 days, on November 5, 2021, law enforcement successfully apprehended 2 suspects, 16-year-old Willard Miller and Jeremy Goodale. Both Miller and Goodale were enrolled as students at Fairfield High School, and notably, they'd been in the class led by Nohema Graber. Interestingly, it was Miller who had engaged in a discussion with Nohema regarding his unsatisfactory grades at school on November 2, 2021. Now, what led to the swift arrests of these 2 students? The breakthrough came from Snapchat messages that directly tied them to Nohema's murder. A confidential witness shared images of a Snapchat conversation uncovering Goodale's admissions of being involved with another person and causing Nohema's death. The witness highlighted Goodale's statements that not only incriminated himself, but also specifically mentioned Miller by name. The search warrant for the Snapchat messages also reportedly shed light on the pair's actions. Allegedly, they'd surveilled Nohema, and the messages provided additional insights into the details of how they executed the crime, disposed of her body, and attempted to cover up evidence linked to the case. Another witness also informed the police that they'd seen a wheelbarrow being pushed along a street shortly before midnight on the night of the murder. During an interview with Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation agents, Miller purportedly confessed to taking the wheelbarrow that was used to conceal Nohema's body from his own residence. Adding to the investigation, the police uncovered a crucial piece of information. A call had originated from Goodale's phone to a different witness, who then proceeded to pick up both Goodale and Miller from the rural road where Nohema's car had been found. This aligned with one of the witnesses' accounts of seeing 2 males driving away with Nohema's car from the park. All the elements fell neatly into place, indicating that Miller and Goodale were the 2 individuals at the center of this unfolding story. In a police interview, Miller expressed his frustrations with Nohema's teaching methods and how his grades in her Spanish class were affecting his GPA. However, Miller initially denied any involvement in Nohema's disappearance, but court documents indicate he later altered his statement. He admitted to having knowledge of the events, but claimed he didn't take part in the crime. According to his account, a roving group of masked kids were the actual perpetrators who allegedly coerced him into using his wheelbarrow to move her body and drive her van away from the park. During the phase of court hearings in December 2022, Miller's lawyer, Christine Branstad, argued that the search warrants were flawed because they didn't prove the informant's reliability. However, with strong evidence on hand, Miller's trial was scheduled for March 20, 2023 in Council Bluffs, while Goodale's trial was set for October 5, 2023 in Davenport. There was solid evidence, including information obtained from Miller's home, statements he made to the police as a 16-year-old, data from his cell phone, and a record of his conversations on his Snapchat account. As a result, it seemed almost certain that Miller would not be able to avoid facing the consequences of his actions. The final decision by the court was made on April 18, 2023, when both the accused pleaded guilty to first-degree murder in the death of Nohema Graber. On July 6, 2023, Miller was sentenced to life in prison, eligible for parole after 35 years. In Iowa, a first-degree murder conviction carries a life imprisonment penalty. However, Iowa Supreme Court rulings mandate that juveniles convicted of even the most serious offenses be granted a chance for parole. Addressing Miller, Judge Sean Showers acknowledged, "Your heinous actions resulted in the loss of Nohema Graber's life, creating an irreplaceable void for her family."
I find that your intent and actions were sinister and evil. Those acts resulted in the intentional loss of human life in a brutal fashion. There's no excuse. There is not a systemic societal problem that explains or justifies your actions.
The judge added that a sentence of life imprisonment without parole might have been considered if permissible under state law. Following the sentencing, Miller expressed his apologies to both Nohema Graber's family and his own family, who were present in the courtroom.
I'd like to take this opportunity to wholeheartedly accept responsibility for the role that I've played in the murder of Nohema Graber. I would like to apologize for my actions, first and foremost to the family. I'm sincerely sorry for the distress that I've caused you and the devastation I've caused your family, and from the bottom of my heart, I am sorry for your loss. I'm sorry to hear about Paul Graber. I would also like to apologize to the community, to just the ripple effect that my actions have had, everyone that has affected. I would like to apologize to Nohema Graber's church. I know now that she was a very active member there and doing a lot of good things there. I'd like to apologize for what I did and how that affected them. I would like to apologize to my family. I love you guys so much, and I'm really sorry for what I've done and how it's affected you. And I'm planning on getting back out there as soon as I can and make up for lost time.
Nohema's brother-in-law, Tom Graber, stood in her husband Paul's stead as he had succumbed to metastatic cancer and passed away. However, Tom remained unconvinced by the apology.
This is the first time I've ever heard an attempted apology from Mr. Miller. I don't believe it because he showed no sign of remorse whatsoever.
Conversely, prior to finalizing his plea agreement with prosecutors, Goodale had intended to testify against Miller during his trial. According to Goodale's account to authorities, Miller was the one who initially struck Nohema with a bat, while he acted as a lookout. Goodale stated that he used the bat to strike her again after the initial blow failed to kill her. Goodale's sentencing was scheduled for August 23, 2023. Prosecutors planned to pursue a sentence of 25 years to life for Goodale. Additionally, both Miller and Goodale were mandated to pay $150,000 in restitution to the Graber family. Despite the impending prison terms for the perpetrators and the justice finally attained by the Graber family, the haunting aftermath of this heinous act lingers. Fairfield police officer Julie Kinsella addressed the community's ordeal during the hearing, saying, "We had students that were scared to death to attend class. We had teachers that didn't want to teach for concerns of their own safety. I don't think that our community will ever be the same again. I think it's devastated us." So, what are your thoughts on this case? Do you believe the teaching community in Fairfield will regain a sense of safety? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. If there's a case you'd like us to cover, don't hesitate to share your suggestions in the comment section below.
Tonight, investigators in Yavapai County have cracked the nearly 40-year-old cold case murder of Cathy Sposito.
It was an early morning time on June 13th, 1987. She's hiking on a popular trail at Thumb Butte. She's attacked and murdered. People can hear her screaming for help. Nobody gets to her in time. By the time she's found, she's dead.
Cathy had grown into a 23-year-old adventurous woman. When she wanted to take some time off from her busy and draining college life, she would often end up exploring new places. Nothing made her feel more calm than hopping on her mountain bike and taking it for a spin. But sadly, one of these adventures became Cathy's last one.
The 23-year-old was violently killed on Thumb Butte Trail in Prescott back in 1987.
What she thought was going to be a pleasant hike on a sunny morning turned into a nightmare as a predator lurking in the dark emerged. Saturday, June 13th, 1987, seemed like a beautiful morning for an adventure in Prescott, Arizona. Thinking so, 23-year-old college student Cathy Sposito headed towards the Thumb Butte Trail near the city for a hike. But she had no idea what was coming her way. As Cathy made her way up into a comparatively secluded part of the trail, she was ambushed by a predator. Just moments after that, Cathy's screams ran out and were heard by other hikers in the area. But when help arrived, it was already too late. Cathy's cold and lifeless body was discovered in a pool of blood, a sight so gruesome that it left the first attendants completely stunned. What happened to Cathy on the hike? Who could have done something so horrible? Were the detectives ever going to nab the monster who did this? The case we'll be covering today will take us back to the summer of 1987 when the gruesome murder of a 23-year-old college student left the town of Prescott in deep shock. Prescott is a city in the heart of Yavapai County, north-central Arizona, USA. It's widely known for its authentic Western character and pleasant climate. The Charlotte Hall Museum and the Smoky Museum showcase the city's rich and diverse history. Being a beautiful mountain town, Prescott offers its residents and visitors stunning scenery and various outdoor activities. People in Prescott enjoy a simple and convenient lifestyle. Prescott may be a charming city, but like most other places, it also has a dark side. Based on FBI crime data, Prescott is not one of the safest communities in America. The chance of someone falling victim to a violent crime in Prescott is 1 in 224. And likely so, Prescott has seen multiple crimes that shook the whole town. One of them takes us back to 1987 when a 23-year-old woman was gruesomely murdered on the Thumb Butte Trail. Catherine Hend Sposito was born on September 7, 1963. She was known to her loved ones as Cathy. Although not much is known about Cathy, it was pretty evident that she was a joyous person who always made the ones around her happy. While Cathy was close to a number of people, she had a special bond with her brother, Justice Salvatore Sposito. By 1987, Cathy had grown into a 23-year-old adventurous woman. At the time, she was a student at Prescott College. When she wanted to take some time off from her busy and draining college life, she would often end up exploring new places. The ventures were always fascinating to her. Nothing made her feel more calm than hopping on her mountain bike and taking it for a spin, whether it was for completing her errands or for an exploratory ride through the woods. But sadly, one of these adventures became Cathy's last one. What she thought was going to be a pleasant hike on a sunny morning turned into a nightmare as a predator lurking in the dark emerged. It was a Saturday morning on June 13, 1987, when Cathy decided to go for a hike nearby. Around 7 in the morning, she rode her mountain bike to the Thumb Butte Trail and began hiking up the path. The famous Thumb Butte Trail is only 3 miles from downtown Prescott. It was considered a somewhat difficult hike, but that had never stopped adventurers like Cathy from taking on the experience. The scenic views of the surrounding and distant mountain ranges from a height of 6,300 feet made every step worth it. Later into the day, when Cathy was on her way down the hike, something awful happened. Cathy's devastating screams echoed through the valley, striking fear into the other hikers. As they followed the sounds in search of the woman in distress, it was already too late, and they were met with a horrific sight. Cathy's body, covered in blood, lay in front of them. Authorities were informed of the tragedy, and they rushed to the crime scene. The horrific nature of the crime left the detectives completely stunned. Cathy had been beaten up with a rock and a wrench before being shot with a .22 caliber pistol in the eye. But that wasn't even the end of her suffering. Cathy was stabbed to death. As the Thumb Butte Trail had always been considered a safe space, Cathy's merciless and gruesome murder left all the residents of Prescott questioning their safety. Cathy's family was informed of the heartbreaking news. Her mysterious and untimely death left them all in deep grief and with many unanswered questions. A few days after the murder, they all gathered at a memorial service for Cathy to remember and cherish the time she spent with them. The Yavapai County Sheriff's Office probed an investigation into the 23-year-old college student's murder, and the hunt for the killer began with full force. Initially, they questioned the people who were at the trail when the crime first occurred, but none of them had seen anything or anyone suspicious on the day of the murder. Since there were no witnesses to the crime, it was hard for them to follow any leads or potential suspects. Inspecting the crime scene, detectives did find traces of foreign DNA on Cathy's body. Detectives also recovered the wrench which had been used on Cathy. This wrench, too, had traces of DNA. However, since DNA technology was still in its developmental stages at the time, the forensics department was unable to perform a DNA analysis at the time of Cathy's death. Identifying Cathy's killer was starting to look like an impossible job. Any tips or leads they followed all led to dead ends. And just like that, years passed, but Cathy's killer still remained unknown. However, Cathy's case never completely went cold. Over the next 3 decades, a lot of detectives worked on Cathy's case and tried to track down the killer. They went through the files and looked at the evidence again and again, hoping to find something that the other detectives might have missed out on. But sadly, nothing definitive was ever found. One of the detectives who worked on Cathy's case was Sheriff David Rhodes. He'd started working on the case as a young deputy in the early 1990s, and Cathy's case was one of his first homicides. Detective Rhodes soon developed an emotional bond with Cathy's case and decided he wasn't going to let the killer roam free even after all these years. Almost 30 years after Cathy's murder, around 2017, detectives were already working on an assault case of an unidentified woman that took place back in April 1990 on the Thumb Butte Trail. This incident had taken place almost 3 years after Cathy had been murdered. The intriguing part about this case was that this assault took place in almost the same part of the trail where Cathy was murdered and around the same time of day as well. Luckily, this woman survived. Through an assault kit, the unknown male's DNA was recovered from the victim's body and preserved for future use. In 2017, advanced and more accessible DNA technology led the forensics team to perform genealogical testing on this DNA sample and compare it with the sample found at the time of Cathy's murder. They noted that the two samples were much alike. The odd similarities in the DNA evidence from both the cases eventually linked them together, and the detectives were finally getting closer to identifying the suspect. Through this DNA evidence, the detectives were able to identify a female descendant of the suspect. With high hopes, the detectives made their way to this woman's home, and she provided them with 2 names, Brian Scott Bennett and his younger brother. It also turned out that this woman was Bennett's daughter, but it wasn't hard for detectives to distinguish between Bennett and his brother. Equipped with the fact that a majority of the DNA on the wrench from Cathy's case belonged to Bennett, he was determined to be the culprit.
Cathy Sposito, I am saying today with high confidence, Cathy Sposito was murdered by Brian Scott Bennett.
It had been 36 years since Cathy's murder, and law enforcement finally had a name for the mysterious man who killed the 23-year-old college student, Brian Scott Bennett. But who was he? Brian Scott Bennett was born on July 30th, 1970. Not much is known about his childhood except for the fact that in 1987, at the time of Cathy's murder, Bennett was a 16-year-old boy who had moved from Calvin, Kentucky to Prescott. He'd enrolled in Prescott High as a sophomore the previous year, and only a few months after murdering Cathy, he withdrew from the school in January 1988. It was never disclosed whether Bennett ever married or not, but he did get a woman pregnant in the summer of 1988 while he was an employee at K-Bob's restaurant in Prescott. In December 1988, after hopping from one job to another, Bennett enlisted in the U.S. Army but deserted it in November 1989. Right after that, he got involved in another string of crimes. Bennett was charged multiple times for forgery of checks and even received a 3 years probation for the same in 1991. Taking a closer look into Bennett's questionable past, detectives uncovered some dark incidents. Apart from Cathy's assault and murder, Bennett had been involved in at least 3 other assault cases. Detective Rhodes said that through the investigation, they found 4 victims connected to Bennett. Cathy Sposito became Bennett's first victim when he murdered her on the Thumb Butte Trail in 1987. Bennett's second victim was the unidentified woman who was assaulted along the same trail in April 1990, the one which helped establish a link to Cathy's case. Just like Cathy, this woman too was out on a hike along the trail, and when Bennett found her alone, he assaulted her. Bennett snuck up behind her, held a rock to her head, and assaulted her before running off into the woods. She had been camping with her boyfriend, who wasn't around when the attack took place. Just 2 months after that incident, in July 1990, Bennett was attending a Chino Valley house party when he locked a girl in a room and assaulted her. Just like everyone else at the party, The girl had been drinking and had only gone to the room to lie down and have some rest when Bennett snuck into the room. The other people at the party were quick to respond to the girl's cry for help. They broke down the door and rescued the girl before filing a complaint. Bennett was later arrested by the Chino Valley Police Department. However, he was later acquitted due to conflicting eyewitness testimonies. Almost 3 years after that, on June 2, 1993, a woman named Renee Sandoval was just leaving the Miller Valley Post Office when she was approached by a man. The man suddenly pulled out a knife and pointed it at Renee. He took her hostage in his car and assaulted her multiple times, but thankfully, a Prescott police officer spotted them and freed Renee. This time too, Bennett was arrested, but soon was let off the hook without being convicted due to discrepancies in the story. According to Renee, Bennett had threatened to kill her since she'd seen his face. Over a year later, in 1994, Bennett moved back to his home in Kentucky and took his own life using a .22 caliber gun, the same kind of firearm that had been used on Cathy. Detective Rhodes said it was still unclear whether it was the exact same gun. In order to confirm Bennett's involvement in Cathy's case and the 1990 assault case, authorities had Bennett's body exhumed in November 2022. They were then successful in obtaining a complete DNA profile, which positively matched the DNA recovered from both attacks. But it wasn't until March 2023 that investigators confirmed DNA on the wrench used in the slayings belonged to Bennett.
We are starting with a major break in a violent murder case from 1987. Today, the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office announced that they have identified the man who murdered Cathy Sposito on Thumb Butte Trail in Prescott.
Investigators say that Brian Scott Bennett is the person responsible. Get this. Detectives say he was a 16-year-old Prescott High School student at the time.
In a press conference, detectives shed light on how the DNA evidence helped them break Cathy's case.
Actually, 46 pieces of individual evidence in the murder of Cathy Sposito that were submitted for DNA analysis over the period of many years to multiple different laboratories. And as DNA technology evolved, so did greater understanding of what we had or what we didn't have present itself. So as a result of that, when I was asked by Lieutenant Pritchard a few years ago, do you remember having reviewed the DNA from victim number 2 against Cathy Sposito? And I said, I don't think I ever did that, but let me go look. And within a matter of days, I was astounded by the consistency and comparison of the numbers that came through.
However, this wasn't an easy task. With cold cases such as Cathy's, there are many difficulties. Acquiring accurate DNA matches became even more difficult because of how the evidence was handled at the time of the original crime. The wrench found at Cathy's crime scene, which was believed to have been used during the attack, tested positive for multiple DNA contributors. This was because before the detectives arrived at the scene, it had been tampered with because another hiker carried it from the original location and handed it to a law enforcement officer on the scene. Cathy's brother, Justice, had lost all hopes of ever finding out who had killed his sister. But when Bennett was identified, he felt relieved.
That's sort of some kind of justice.
Justice Salvatore Sposito has been waiting 36 years to get.
I never thought that they would even solve this case.
Since Bennett, who would have been 53 now, had already passed away and there was never going to be a trial, detectives hoped to close Cathy's case under exceptional circumstances. Detective Rhodes announced that the sheriff's office had closed all the cases against Bennett except for Cathy's. This was due to the fact that the investigators found multiple contributors of DNA on the evidence, and hence they would still continue to investigate the case further. And even though justice couldn't be brought in the court because of Bennett's death, it did bring long-sought peace and a sense of relief for the survivors and Cathy's family. In a conference, Detective Rhodes thanked the detectives and the volunteers who worked on the case and stated that they probably might not have solved Cathy's murder mystery without their help. He and law enforcement were happy that there was finally a sense of closure for the families of all the 4 victims who fell prey to Bennett. Detective Rhodes shared that it was one of the toughest cases to crack that he'd ever worked on. Law enforcement couldn't always make time to fully focus on cold cases, as they'd already been tasked with ensuring public safety, and that's why they made use of a system which involved experienced investigators working hand in hand with volunteers. The cold case team was composed of 6 volunteers who worked long hours going through mountains of evidence. They had the time to just sit down and focus on the case they were working on. The team was always under the supervision of a homicide detective. Law enforcement said that even though they were not able to link Bennett to any other crimes in the state or around the country, they believed that there was a good chance there were more survivors out there.
We want to encourage other victims that we may not know about, or we may not have heard of, or they may not have reported what happened to them, to come forward, and perhaps we can provide some closure.
According to Detective Rhodes, looking at the frequency of Bennett's acts, it was very unlikely that these were the only 4 cases in which he was involved. He added that the fact that Bennett took his own life most likely spared 3 decades of additional victims.
I ask that everybody in the community pray for these victims. Pray for all these people that have suffered a crime like this. Pray for those people who never had a voice, who were never given an opportunity.
Renee Sandoval, Bennett's 4th victim, was at the conference too. She said that after waiting for 3 decades, there was finally justice. The long wait had made it even more important for her that she share her story. She was finally at peace and only hoped that since Bennett had been identified, more survivors would come forward to share their stories and seek the help they needed to move forward.
I have met some awesome people. I've met the Sposito, well, not met them, but I've spoke to them on the phone over and over. I've been in touch with another victim, the one before me, the one that the sheriff described.
Recently, Renee founded a support group with Cathy's family and Bennett's other survivors. They often get together to simply communicate about their experiences and provide each other the support they need. Even though they didn't know each other initially, they feel like they're connected in a way.
I got to kind of know Cathy from her brother, Sal. Love you, Sal. They were very, very close. He told me so much about her, about their family, things they've done together. And he never gave up. He never, ever gave up, never wavered. And today, she's free. Cathy, you're free.
What are your thoughts about the case? Do you think that there are more of Bennett's surviving victims that remain unaware of their attacker's identity? Do you think there could be any more unsolved homicides linked to Bennett? Let us know your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. The 1920s in Los Angeles was undoubtedly a beautiful era, yet the city was no stranger to crimes during that period. One such chilling incident was the case of 12-year-old Marion Parker, a tragedy labeled as the most horrible crime of the 1920s by the Los Angeles Times. On December 15, 1927, Marion Parker vanished without a trace after being dismissed from her classes at Mount Vernon Junior High School in Lafayette Square. Little did anyone know, this disappearance would soon escalate into a gut-wrenching horror when her father came face to face with the kidnapper. Who could have abducted Marion in broad daylight? What happened when her father finally met the abductor? But before delving into the story, let's first go back to the time when Los Angeles was just becoming a major activity hub. The city was a burgeoning hub of innovation and cultural diversity, experiencing rapid growth fueled by the oil boom, the expansion of the railway network, and the allure of the expanding film industry. It was during this time the Parker family started their family in the heart of the city. To be precise, it was 1906, when 27-year-old prosperous banker Perry Marion Parker wedded the 26-year-old lovely Geraldine Hazel. The couple set up their home at 1631 South Wilton Place, Los Angeles, California. Their joy multiplied when, on January 14, 1907, they welcomed a son, Perry Willard Parker. 8 years later, on October 11, 1915, their family expanded with the arrival of identical twin daughters, Marjorie Helen and Marion Frances Parker. The family seemed complete, yet little did they know that their perfect life was on the verge of being shattered. The fateful day unfolded on December 15, 1927. In the afternoon, a neatly dressed and well-spoken young man entered the office of Mount Vernon Junior High School in Los Angeles, California, where the 12-year-old twins Marjorie and Marion were attending. Identifying himself as Mr. Cooper, he approached the school registrar, Miss Mary Holt, and inquired about the Parker girl. Mr. Cooper informed Miss Holt that his boss, Perry Parker, had been involved in a severe car accident and urgently needed his daughter to be with him. When Miss Holt inquired, "Which one?" the man appeared surprised and promptly replied, "Marion." School secretary Miss Naomi Flinton accompanied Marion to the office, and both women granted her permission to leave with the stranger. They observed as Marion walked down the pathway, Mr. Cooper reassuring her, saying, "Don't cry, little girl. I'll take you to your daddy." Marion got into the passenger seat of a coupe, and tragically, that moment marked the last time anyone would lay eyes on her. Geraldine grew increasingly concerned when Marjorie returned home without her twin, leading her to make urgent phone calls to the girl's schoolmates and friends. However, nobody had seen Marion. Concern quickly escalated into fear when Perry received a telegram bearing a chilling message: "Do positively nothing till you receive a special delivery letter, Marion Parker." The telegram seemed to bear Marion's signature. A second telegram, sent shortly after from Alhambra, said, "Marion secure. Use good judgment. Interference with my plans dangerous." The message was signed with the name George Fox. Perry contacted school officials who explained the encounter with Mr. Cooper. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Perry immediately contacted the police as it was evident that his 12-year-old daughter had been abducted. Officers quickly recorded Marion's description. She was 4 feet 6 inches tall, approximately 100 pounds, wearing an English print dress, brown Oxford shoes, and tan stockings. Her straight dark brown hair was in a jaw-length bob. She was similar in appearance to Marjorie. The man was described as white, aged between 25 and 30, about 5 feet 8 inches tall, weighing about 150 pounds. He was dressed in a heavy grayish-brown overcoat, black shoes, and wore a dark hat. These detailed descriptions were immediately shared with the press, initiating a widespread search for the missing girl and her abductor. Chief of Detectives Herman Klein issued an urgent directive for every officer to participate in the case and voiced his deep concerns about the girl's whereabouts. With every passing hour, Perry and Geraldine became increasingly overwhelmed with worry, as none of the extensive efforts made by law enforcement revealed even a single trace of Marion. The following day, a ransom note arrived at the Parker home, insisting on a payment of $15,000 in gold certificates in exchange for the safe return of Marion. In one of the subsequent telegrams, a chilling message was conveyed. No one will ever see the girl again except the angels in heaven. This letter, signed Fate, also bore the word Thanatos, Greek for death, written at the top. All these letters were signed with aliases such as Fate, Death, or The Fox. One letter included a postscript in Marion's handwriting. "Daddy, please do what this man tells you, or he'll kill me if you don't. Your loving daughter, Marion Parker." Through the telegram correspondence, a meeting location was established in the late hours of December 16, 1927, for Perry to exchange the ransom. The location was 10th Street and Gramercy Place. Before his departure, Perry meticulously recorded the serial numbers of each of the bills, ensuring they could be identified in future transactions. This foresight allowed authorities to trace the kidnapper. However, Perry's initial attempt to deliver the ransom ended in failure. The kidnapper became aware that the police were tailing Perry and monitoring the expected exchange. Consequently, the kidnapper didn't show up, leaving Perry waiting at the location for hours in vain. The kidnapper subsequently sent more letters, assuring Perry that the child was still alive, although only for the time being. He asserted that Marion had seen him during the failed ransom handover and expressed bewilderment as to why her father hadn't come to her aid. The mysterious man instructed Perry to await a telephone call and warned him explicitly to keep law enforcement at a distance. At 7:35 p.m. on December 17th, the anticipated call finally came. The kidnapper directed Perry to bring the money to the intersection of West 5th Street and South Manhattan Place in Los Angeles. Perry arrived at the designated location at 8 p.m. carrying the cash, eager to meet the demands in the desperate hope of reuniting with his daughter. However, the father's hopes were on the verge of shattering into pieces. The unidentified man, driving a Chrysler coupe, pulled up alongside Perry's vehicle, brandished a sawed-off shotgun, and held him at gunpoint. His face was mostly covered by a bandana. In the midst of the exchange, Perry managed to catch a glimpse of Marion in the passenger seat, her body hidden up to her neck by clothing and apparently motionless. The man told Perry that she was sleeping. However, despite calling out to her, she didn't respond. Moreover, her eyes were open but vacant, so Perry suspected she'd been drugged. Once the money exchanged hands, the assailant shifted his vehicle into gear, propelling Marion out of the car before speeding away abruptly. Perry rushed to his daughter, clinging to the hope that she was merely asleep. Disregarding the need to put the car in park, he cradled his little girl, but what he encountered was a scene of sheer horror. She had been extremely disfigured. Her body was without limbs. Her eyes were fixed open with piano wires. Her abdomen was cut open and stuffed with a towel and a man's shirt. Dr. A.E. Wagner, conducting the initial autopsy, was utterly shocked to discover that the lifeless body beneath the sheet on the autopsy table was his young neighbor, Marion. His judgment was clouded by the conflict of interest, leading him to list her cause of death as exhaustion and fright. The doctor clarified that he was familiar with Marion's anxious nature. He believed that when she found herself in that situation, she probably couldn't sleep or eat during those 3 dreadful days. It was confirmed that Marion had passed away just 12 hours before her discovery, indicating she was very likely alive during the initial attempted meeting. Although the body was extremely disfigured, there were no signs of assault, and no evidence of drugs such as chloroform or ether was found in the child's system. Now, with the autopsy completed, the police launched an intensive manhunt to track down the heartless killer. A widespread manhunt for Marion's killer commenced on December 17, 1927, engaging more than 20,000 police officers and American Legion volunteers. A reward of $50,000 was initially offered for the identification and capture of the killer, dead or alive. Later, this amount was increased to $100,000 following numerous contributions from the public. On December 18, 1927, some civilians walking in Elysian Park in Los Angeles located some bundles wrapped in newspaper, secured with a length of twine, and inside were severed limbs and organs. Later, tests confirmed that the parts indeed belonged to Marion. Moreover, at 620 Manhattan Street, a woman noticed a suitcase on her front lawn. It contained some blood-soaked papers and also a spool of thread. It was also confirmed that the thread found was the same thread the killer used to sew Marion's eyes open. On December 20th, the getaway car used by Marion's killer was discovered abandoned. It was identified as a vehicle stolen in San Diego. Fingerprints were successfully lifted from the car's door, providing potential leads for the ongoing investigation. During this period, several suspects were under consideration, including Earl Smith, the son of a local dentist, and Louis H. Watt, who was apprehended and interviewed in Las Vegas, Nevada. However, they were both cleared of suspicion after Mary Holt, the registrar who had spoken with Marion's abductor, confirmed that neither of them matched the description of the man she had encountered. Later, the police traced a laundry mark on the towel found inside Marion's torso to the Bellevue Arms apartments, leading them to interview several tenants. On December 20, 1927, the fingerprints taken from the getaway car were identified as belonging to William Edward Hickman, a former co-worker of Perry Parker. Both men had worked at the First National Bank of Los Angeles, where William was a messenger boy. The police formed their suspicions towards William and delved deeper into his life. William Edward Hickman was born in Sebastian, Arkansas in 1908 as the youngest son of Eva and William H. Hickman. William spent his early years in Kansas City, Missouri. However, the family faced difficulties when his father deserted them in 1925. Upon re-examining the evidence, the police discovered a crucial detail. On one of the telegrams from the killer, the address 2518 Birch Street, ALH, was scrawled in the bottom corner. It was revealed that this address was where William had lived with his mother, Eva, the previous year, which was 1926. Additionally, the towels found inside Marion's abdomen were marked with Bellevue Arms, referring to an apartment building at 168 Bellevue Avenue in Los Angeles. On December 20th, 1927, the police conducted an investigation at the building and consulted with the officials. They learned that a former tenant of apartment number 315, named Donald Evans, resembled the description of Marion's abductor. The police found no other evidence that would help them in the case, and moreover, Donald Evans was nowhere to be found. Interestingly, it was later revealed that Donald Evans was, in fact, William Hickman using an alias. However, the details of how the police discovered this information were not disclosed to the public. With this revelation, it became evident that William Hickman was indeed the perpetrator behind this notorious murder. To solidify their belief, the investigators needed to understand why William chose Marion Parker. Moreover, if it was initially a ransom attempt, the question remained, why resort to killing her? The answer emerged when it was revealed that in 1926, William had been arrested due to a complaint filed by Perry Parker concerning stolen and forged checks amounting to $400. He was convicted and received probation as his sentence. Following the incident, he spent 6 months residing with family in Kansas City, Missouri, before returning to Los Angeles. Consequently, the police suspected that William might have acted out of vengeful feelings towards the Parker family, given his previous arrest and conviction related to Perry Parker's complaint. Soon, additional fingerprints lifted from the ransom notes were positively identified as William's. During the examination of William's apartment in the Bellevue complex, investigators discovered bloody footprints, providing crucial evidence of a crime. Furthermore, police found partially burned handwritten drafts of ransom letters, along with newspaper clippings about the kidnapping. Residents of the Bellevue Arms informed the police that William had not been home during their initial search of the building, explaining why he hadn't been encountered by law enforcement. Additionally, a janitor in the building reported witnessing William carrying several packages to his car on the night of December 16th and observed him cleaning the car seats the following day. The investigation file was nearly complete, with one crucial task remaining: apprehending William. However, finding him proved to be a bit of a challenging endeavor for the police. After William vanished, the first piece of information the police obtained was his escape to Oregon. He was spotted by a gas station attendant in Albany, Oregon on the morning of December 20th, 1927, driving a green Hudson vehicle later determined to have been stolen in Los Angeles. At the Albany gas station, William purchased 10 liters of gasoline. According to the attendant, William was dressed in a dark blue suit and wore Oxford shoes. The attendant reported the sighting to the police the next day after reading a newspaper article indicating that William was likely driving a green Hudson. Subsequently, police were able to trace him to Seattle, Washington, where he used 2 of the $20 gold certificates given to him as part of Perry's ransom to buy clothes from a haberdashery on the evening of December 21st, 1927. At around 6:30 a.m. on December 22nd, Fred King, a gas station proprietor in Portland, spotted William at his service station, where he was once again purchasing gasoline. King promptly reported the sighting to the police, mentioning that William had driven away from the service station heading east in the direction of the Columbia River Gorge. Following King's report, a bulletin was issued, and officers were stationed on all roads leading east of Portland in an effort to apprehend William. Time was finally running out for William Hickman. On December 22, 1927, Oregon police officers Chief Gurdain and Officer Llewellyn were on a smoke break in Echo, Oregon, when they spotted an unmistakable green Hudson passing by. Officer Llewellyn sped over 40 miles per hour with Gurdain on the running board until they were beside the stolen Hudson. They aimed a pistol at the driver, who made a half-hearted attempt to escape, but eventually pulled over. William didn't resist when they arrested him. Instead, he simply shrugged his shoulders and uttered, "Well, I guess it's all over." William's initial response to the crime was, "I did it because I wanted the money to pay my way through college." Later, he changed his statement saying, "Some fiend killed her. I don't know who he is." While detained at the Umatilla County Jail in Pendleton, Oregon, William confessed to his involvement in Parker's kidnapping, but attempted to shift blame onto 2 men, brothers Oliver and Frank Kramer, as the ones who carried out the murder. He shared a detailed account with a journalist from the East Oregonian, claiming he participated in the kidnapping plan with the Kramers. According to William, he spent time with Marion Parker, even taking her to see a movie at the Rialto Theater. He admitted to sending telegrams and making phone calls, but insisted it was the Kramers who committed the murder. However, the police found this story to be impossible, as the Kramer brothers had been in custody for several months on unrelated charges. It was later discovered that William knew the brothers through one of their girlfriends with whom he was acquainted. Police believed William attempted to implicate them due to their criminal backgrounds, but investigators were confident that neither the Kramer men nor their girlfriends were aware of or involved in Parker's abduction or murder. Additionally, William initially denied committing the murder in his apartment at the Bellevue Arms, despite the discovery of blood evidence there. Captain Bright of the Pendleton Police Department remarked, "William said the Parker girl was not killed in the Bellevue Arms apartment house. We know that she was killed there. If his statement is wrong in that, it's discredited in other details." Following his extradition to Los Angeles, William confessed to an unrelated murder he'd committed during a drugstore holdup and also admitted to multiple other armed robberies. In later correspondence, authorities managed to extract additional information about Marion's murder from him. William provided these details through a written confession after his earlier claims about the involvement of the Kramer brothers were proven false. William confessed that in his apartment at the Bellevue Arms, he'd blindfolded Marion and tied her to a chair until she was unconscious. He then strangled her. He went on to hang Marion's body upside down in his bathtub and slice her throat at the jugular vein to drain the body of blood. After cutting off her arms and legs, he proceeded to disembowel her, during which he stated the body jerked with such force that it flew out of the tub, suggesting that she might still have been alive during the whole process. He then wrapped Marion's limbs in newspaper before temporarily storing her torso in a suitcase. After that, he left the apartment and went to watch a film at the Lowe's State Theater. However, he claimed he couldn't concentrate on the movie and cried throughout. Later that night, realizing that Parker's father might want to physically see his daughter before paying the ransom, William attempted a gruesome reconstruction to disguise Marion's lifeless body, making it seem as if she were alive. He applied makeup to her and sewed her eyes open with wire. Reflecting on the entire tragic incident, William told the police, "She felt perfectly safe, and the tragedy was so sudden and unexpected that I'm sure she never actually suffered through the whole situation, except for a little sobbing, which she couldn't keep back for her father and mother." During the trial, William informed his attorneys that he'd killed Parker under the direction of a supernatural deity he referred to as Providence. This assertion was presented by William's defense attorney in court, who sought to rationalize William's actions by claiming insanity. The defense argued that William was mentally ill and profoundly influenced by his religious grandfather, who'd exposed him to frenzied religious exorcisms, out of the limbo of his subconscious mind, surcharged with severe repressions of his awful childhood, homicide and mutilation ideated. William was among the first defendants to utilize California's new law allowing pleas of not guilty by reason of insanity. However, this plea took him nowhere. The testimonies from prison guards at the Umatilla County Jail in Oregon, stating that William had inquired about how he could act crazy during his incarceration, contradicted his plea of insanity. Moreover, Dr. W.D. McCary, a Pendleton psychologist who examined William in jail, noted that his mind seemed clear, and he told a straight and coherent story, and that he was never at a loss for words. He concluded that there's nothing about him to indicate insanity. In February 1928, a jury dismissed the insanity defense, leading to William's sentencing of death by hanging. He appealed his conviction, but the California Supreme Court upheld the decision. It was apparent by that time that William wanted to seek revenge on Perry Parker, but beyond that, he aimed to gain notoriety. There's evidence suggesting that William committed the murder in part for the publicity it would garner him. He confessed to a reporter that he desired the same level of media attention received by notorious killers like Leopold and Loeb. However, in his final months, William reportedly embraced Roman Catholicism and penned letters of apology to his victims' families. On October 19, 1928, William was hanged on the gallows at San Quentin Prison. As he fell through the trapdoors, he struck his head and hung, violently twitching and jerking in his final moment. It took approximately 2 minutes for William to die. A post-mortem examination after his execution revealed that William's neck did not break during the hanging, but he died from asphyxia. After 78 years, on February 25, 2016, James L. Nebar, an American film historian and writer, published the book Butterfly in the Rain in the memory of Marion Parker.
I feel like I didn't do anything wrong and I paid for money.
Is it our job to teach you, or is it your job to learn?
Your job is to protect society, yes. You can't put that back on my face because of COVID. You can't put that back on my face. I will literally sue you. Let go! Help!
Have you ever heard of the police arresting anybody because they're too pretty? Sounds like a joke, right? Well, that's what 28-year-old Hend Bustami said to the authorities when she was taken into custody at Harry Reid International Airport in Paradise, Nevada on August 31st, 2022.
A Nevada woman who told officers she was too good-looking to be arrested.
From our 8 News Now investigators, new details about the woman who once claimed she was too pretty to be arrested.
Her arrest was due to her failure to pay the bill at a Chili's restaurant and violating airport rules. The incident could have ended as a quirky tale for the internet, but the situation took a darker turn just 2 months later when the Las Vegas police received this disturbing 911 call from Hend.
Do you need police, fire, or medical?
Medical. I think I killed my mommy.
What did you do to her?
I killed her.
Why do you think you killed your mom?
Because I did. I murdered her.
What could have triggered the transition from a seemingly ridiculous crime to a sinister one? And what exactly could have driven Hend Bustami to commit matricide? Today's story transports us to Las Vegas, often referred to as the entertainment capital of the world, a city like no other. Nestled in the southern part of the state of Nevada, it's renowned for its vibrant nightlife, dazzling casinos, and world-class entertainment. The Las Vegas Strip, a neon-lit boulevard lined with iconic resorts and hotels, is at the heart of the city's appeal, offering visitors a sensory overload of lights, music, and excitement. Beyond the gaming tables and slot machines, you'll discover a thriving arts and culture scene. With its unique blend of extravagance, hospitality, and a touch of the surreal, Las Vegas is a place where dreams come to life. However, even in a city known for its glitz and glamour, the darker aspects of life sometimes come to the forefront, as demonstrated by the tragic case where a 62-year-old mother lost her life at the hands of her own daughter. Unfortunately, we possess limited information about the central character of our story today, Hend Karim Bustami. Born in March 1993 in San Francisco, Hend was the eldest daughter of her mother, Afaf Hussein, and information regarding her father remains scarce. Her educational journey led her to Colorado High School in Nevada, and she eventually obtained a bachelor's degree in hospitality management from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas in 2017. In terms of her professional life, Hend, also known by the name Henny, dabbled in various professions. As per her social media pages, her work history included roles in sales, marketing, and a cocktail server. Her LinkedIn profile detailed her as a seasoned hospitality professional with 5 years of experience in the food and beverage industry, possessing skills in sales, team member training, and customer service. She harbored ambitions to enhance her skills in other areas of business, particularly in marketing. Beyond these pursuits, Hend took on the role of a DJ, adopting the moniker Aphrodite, with her YouTube channel featuring numerous videos of her DJ work. Additionally, she operated an Instagram business account dedicated to the sale of skin and hair products. Her Instagram also showcased various photos from festivals, concerts, and what appeared to be snapshots from modeling shoots, though it remains uncertain whether she was a professional model. All in all, her social media pages gave the impression of an average, ambitious young woman who was trying to enjoy many different sides of life. However, it was far from reality. Beneath the surface of this glamorous exterior lay a tale quite to the contrary.
What's your first and last name?
Hend Bustami.
On August 31st, 2022, Hend Bustami engaged in an unusual incident. She dined at a Chili's restaurant at Harry Reid International Airport in Las Vegas, Nevada, and then departed without settling her bill. Law enforcement was promptly alerted, and while the police couldn't locate her right away, they became aware that she was still within the airport when TSA agents reported an individual matching her description sleeping near a security checkpoint, causing disruptions to their operations. Upon discovering her, the officers identified her as Hend Bustami. Allegedly, she was found drunk at the baggage area. The entire episode was recorded on body cam footage, which you're about to witness. As evident from Hend's behavior throughout this video, her actions were undeniably bizarre.
And then you will go to the ground.
But you need all those things to make you keep squeezing my arm, bitch.
Because you keep on turning on you.
I'm not
And
turning
it's
you
not gonna
on.
happen.
I'm turning you on, huh?
No, you're an idiot.
Fuck yeah.
There we go.
She not only resisted arrest, but also made outlandish claims, such as knowing judges and threatening to sue the officers for their conduct.
There's not a freedom of speech when you threaten.
I feel like I didn't do anything wrong and I paid like for money
Is it
here.
our job to teach you, or is it your job to learn?
Your job is to protect society, yes. You can't put that back on my face because of COVID. You can't put that back on my face. I will literally sue you. Stop! Help!
Whether her erratic behavior was a result of her intoxicated state or not, it was evident that she was not in her right mind. According to the arresting officer, Hend was even unable to sign the ticket due to her drunken state. However, it was the extent of her irrational comments that surprised everyone. While not visible in the video, Hend allegedly threatened to spit on all the officers and accused them of being perverts trying to assault her because they'd never encountered anyone as good-looking as her. These comments thrust her into the limelight and made headlines.
A Nevada woman who told officers she was too good-looking to be arrested.
From our 8 News Now investigators, new details about the woman who once claimed she was too pretty to be arrested.
Hend Bustami faced a misdemeanor charge for violating public conduct at the airport and was subsequently arrested. Interestingly, it was revealed that this wasn't her first encounter with the law. Authorities uncovered an additional warrant for her arrest, stemming from a separate incident in which she was cited for battery on June 1, 2022, as documented in Las Vegas municipal court records. This specific incident involved Hend engaging in violence against a security guard at a business in the Arts District of Las Vegas. Strangely, Hend failed to attend her arraignment in July, prompting a judge to issue a bench warrant for her arrest. After her arrest in August, Hend spent time in the Clark County Detention Center until her $1,000 bond was paid, leading to her release on bail. Her court appearance was scheduled for October 27, 2022. This story could have ended here as a peculiar incident, with the individual facing the consequences for her crimes. However, what transpired next was beyond anyone's expectations. Little did anyone anticipate that Hend had different intentions for this hearing, planning to skip it in a manner that would shock everyone. On October 26, 2022, just the day before Hend Bustami's court appearance, at 2:34 a.m., the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department received a disturbing 911 call from her. She was calling from 10190 Juneflower Drive near South Jones Boulevard and West Cactus Avenue in Las Vegas, where 28-year-old Hend lived with her 62-year-old mother, Afaf Hussein. In an unnervingly calm voice, she reported that her mother was dead, and she claimed to be the reason for it.
Do you need police, fire, or medical?
Medical. I think I killed my mommy.
What did you do to her?
I killed her.
Why do you think you killed your mom?
Because I did. I murdered her.
How did you do that?
I broke the table on her head and I broke it.
How did you kill her? You said something about a table?
I broke the table on her head.
You dropped the table on her head?
I broke the table on her head and I cut her neck off.
And you cut what?
Her neck off.
Following Hend's shocking murder confession, she provided the dispatchers with the home address and then abruptly hung up. When police arrived at the scene, there was no sign of Hend or any other individuals. Upon entering the house, they were met with a horrifying sight. The master bedroom bore signs of a violent struggle, and on the floor lay Hend's mother, Afaf, with multiple lacerations. Despite the efforts of paramedics, she'd already succumbed to her injuries. As Hend had already fled the scene, officers turned to her neighbors for information. Fortunately for them, a vital clue was left behind. As it turned out, a neighbor's Ring camera had captured Hend leaving the home where Afaf was killed. Shortly after making the chilling 911 call, she was seen departing, getting into a Honda Accord and driving away. Not even an hour after Hend drove away from the murder scene, at around 3:17 a.m., a license plate reader detected her vehicle traveling south on Interstate 15 towards California. The California Highway Patrol began following her, eventually pulling her over near Barstow, California.
We then started looking for the vehicle and the daughter. CHP was able to locate, stop her, take her to custody at about 5 a.m. this morning in Barstow, California.
Hend Bustami was the only person in the car, and her clothing was visibly stained with what appeared to be blood. Furthermore, she had cuts and bruises on her hands. Following initial questioning, she was taken to the Barstow police station at around 5 a.m. Following Bustami's apprehension by the California Highway Patrol, they promptly alerted the Las Vegas authorities, leading to 2 Metro detectives traveling to the Barstow Police Department for an interview with Hend. In this interview, Hend recounted the events of that fateful evening on October 25, 2022, when she got into a verbal altercation with her mother.
Usually 10 o'clock or later, they would just be screaming in the backyard or they'd be fighting.
She explained that the argument ignited when she requested cigarettes from her mother, triggering a physical dispute over their relationship. In an attempt to defuse the situation, Afaf distanced herself from Hend and went to the master bedroom to cool off. However, tensions continued to rise, and Hend succumbed to a deadly fit of rage, pursuing her mother into the bedroom. There, she wielded a coffee table and struck it against Afaf's head, using the glass end table as a weapon. She then took a sizable shard of broken glass and mercilessly stabbed her multiple times, ultimately slashing her throat. Following this horrific act, she contacted 911 to report the incident and subsequently fled the scene. The officers later reported that Hend made a spontaneous confession, openly admitting to the murder of her mother. According to police records, their data revealed that in 2022 alone, law enforcement responded to Hend and Afaf's residence a total of 12 times, with 7 of these incidents related to family disturbances. One particular episode from July 2022 involved Hend, her mother, and another family member. During this incident, an argument erupted between Hend and the family member, escalating to the point where Hend kicked her feet and subsequently slapped her mother. Following this physical altercation, Hend left the residence, retrieved a large stone, and menacingly raised it while addressing her mother, saying, "Do you want me to hit you with this?" Additionally, the family member alleged that, during the heated argument, Hend attempted to set his beard on fire with a lighter. Yet when the officers attempted to engage Hend in conversation to hear her perspective on the incident, she declined to provide a statement. Due to the absence of corroborating witnesses or visible physical injuries, probable cause was not established at that time, and no legal actions were taken against her. Neighbors provided additional insight into the situation, confirming that their home was notorious for being the loudest on the block.
I could always hear the screaming and yelling, so I just tried to keep to myself. And of course, shortly after, the screaming, their police presence would be involved and things would get settled down. And then a week later, it'd happen again.
One neighbor, Andres Moreno, who resided next door to Hend and Afaf, acknowledged being aware of the turbulent relationship between the mother and daughter. Furthermore, Moreno revealed that he and other neighbors had witnessed Hend's peculiar behavior and glimpses of potential mental health issues.
She would come outside and literally spin in her driveway singing songs or talking to herself in her driveway, or she just walk up and down the street muttering to herself. I believe she had mental health issues and she really did desperately need help, but maybe she chose not to get it, or, who am I to say, but there's obviously something going on with her.
He also added that they observed her engage in other weird actions, such as approaching strangers for rides, entering neighbors' open garages without permission, and carelessly scattering her belongings outside. During the early morning hours of October 26, 2022, Andres Moreno had heard a loud noise, which now appeared to be related to the heinous act. At the time, the source of the noise was unknown, but this detail became a vital piece in reconstructing the case for the police. However, the most critical evidence emerged from the circle of friends surrounding Afaf. She'd confided in her friends about her fears regarding her daughter, Hend. In fact, Afaf was visiting a friend's house just a day before her murder when she expressed her concern, saying, "I'm worried to go home. Maybe she'll kill me." It was evident that Afaf had an inkling of her daughter's intentions. Tragically, she was never able to get help. Therefore, when sales consultant Afaf Hussainen failed to appear for work at Findlay Chevrolet, a vehicle dealership in Las Vegas, on the fateful morning of October 26, 2022, her friend grew concerned for her safety and immediately called 911. What they didn't know was that by that time, their friend had already met her untimely demise, something she'd feared all along. Nearly a year after her mother's murder, on September 26, 2023, Hend Bustami, now 29 years old, appeared in the Clark County District Court. She entered a plea deal, and as part of the agreement, she pleaded guilty but mentally ill to second-degree murder involving a deadly weapon. Additionally, she admitted guilt to other charges, including burglary, home invasion, possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute, sale of a controlled substance, and various gaming-related offenses, all of which carried prior felony convictions. Hend Bustami's sentencing is set for December 19, 2023. According to court records, she could potentially receive a sentence ranging from 10 years to life for the second-degree murder charge alone. Closure may never truly come in a case like this. Losing a life at the hands of one's own flesh and blood is a tragedy that leaves no one truly victorious. It's a scenario that shatters families, leaving one family member deceased and sending another behind bars. It's a heartbreaking outcome for everyone involved. This case serves as a somber reminder for the need of support, intervention, and understanding in cases involving mental health issues and family dynamics. Beautiful, fitness freak, and a mother of 5. 37-year-old Rachel Morin was living her best life. However, everything was about to turn upside down. On August 6, 2023, Rachel's lifeless body was discovered along the Ma and Pa Trail in Harford County, Maryland, merely a day after she was reported missing. And the sole lead to crack this case was this man.
We're about to show you on our TV screens to be the person that murdered Rachel Morin on August 5th.
Who could this man be? What could have happened to Rachel Morin? This incident occurred in Harford County, Maryland, which is typically known as a family-friendly destination. Despite this troubling case, Harford County is generally appreciated for its strong community bonds, excellent schools, and beautiful landscapes. The area usually embodies an ideal family region, offering a peaceful environment and a sense of togetherness among residents. However, this unfortunate incident stands as an exception to the county's usual charm. Now first, let's rewind to the past when our victim, Rachel Morin, entered this world. Rachel H. Morin was born on May 20th, 1986, in Dover, New Hampshire, a northeastern region in the U.S. She was dearly loved as the daughter of Patty Morin and the late Ronald Zach Morin. Rachel was also a caring sister to her siblings, Rebecca, Nathan, Michael, John, and Josiah. While much of the personal details regarding her are limited, it's known that Rachel was a devoted mother. She had 5 children, although their names aren't known. Rachel's passion revolved around her children and family. They meant the world to her. Additionally, she had a love for fashion and was a fitness enthusiast, frequently taking part in 5K marathons and weightlifting competitions. She even worked as a model and appeared on the cover of Owl magazine, which was the local Hartford Community College's student newsletter. Whenever possible, Rachel cherished traveling and had explored destinations like Miami, Aruba, Las Vegas, and various places in New England. Rachel was the heart of any gathering, with a special talent for making people laugh. Her infectious joy lit up the room, evident in her charming smile. Alongside her lively spirit, she was profoundly committed to her faith, which served as a guiding force in her life. Rachel was best described as a woman filled with faith, love, and a spirit of adventure. She embraced life with contagious enthusiasm, spreading happiness and affection to everyone she met. While the details of Rachel's earlier marriage remained unclear, she eventually found love again. This time, her heart was captured by Richard Tobin, who shared her passion for fitness. Richard worked as an apprentice electrician at J. Dahl Electrical Systems in Bel Air. He became her workout partner, travel companion, and, she hoped, a significant part of her future. However, fate had a vastly different ending in store for her. It all happened on August 5th, 2023. Rachel's day appeared fairly ordinary, following its usual pattern. Around 2 p.m., she went to Glow, the bronzing studio, for a tanning session. Later, Rachel, being a health enthusiast, went out for her early evening walk along a familiar trail in Bel Air, Maryland. It was just another routine outing for her, something she did every day. However, this time, she never returned home. That very night, Rachel's boyfriend Richard reported her missing to the police at 11:23 p.m. However, the authorities were unable to locate her immediately.
I wish I was in a position to stand here and say that we have a suspect, that we know that this was a targeted thing. Not that that's a good thing, but that at least the rest of the community is not at threat, and I cannot say that.
Tensions were escalating, and the next day, on August 6, 2023, the atmosphere shifted from tension to that of shock and despair. At around 1 p.m. that day, a citizen dialed 911 to report discovering a woman's body off to the side of a tunnel of the Morin Trail.
That's right. We just received a call from a Cecilia who's advising that she has located the missing Rachel Morin subject on the in a tunnel that runs under 23 Priority 4 near mile marker 2.75 on the Caller is standing by at that location. 1350 dispatch on the route through Montauk Trail. Reference to Montauk, callers advising that the victim appears to have sustained a head injury. They have been instructed not to touch anything. She's inside the tunnel as soon as you walk in.
One dispatch, where's that at?
7101, they're advising near mile marker 2.75 on the Montauk.
You said under 23?
That's what I have the information showing in the call.
Alright, you're out.
Is anyone out with the Cecilia caller who found the body?
103 dispatch, we were just out with her. She directed us to the tunnel where to go. We're searching the area now.
When the police reached the location, they found out that it was indeed Rachel's lifeless body. And thus, the search for the missing person turned into a possibly notorious homicide case.
Basically, when we walked up, we saw fresh blood, and my daughter's boyfriend thought it was deer blood at first.
The investigation commenced with interviews. According to her boyfriend, Richard, he and Rachel started dating a few months prior and had just updated their relationship status on Facebook on August 1st, 2023, only 5 days before she went missing. He told them that he'd last seen her at around 6 p.m. on August 5th. Unfortunately, he didn't have much information that could assist the investigation. Moreover, the tests had not yet yielded any results, and it hadn't been confirmed as a homicide at that point. However, the police strongly believed that it was a homicide case. Her car was discovered parked in a lot at the trailhead, exactly where Richard had indicated she'd leave it. However, the initial evidence was scarce and kept confidential.
There's a lot of speculation. The detectives have the facts, let them work the facts, and hopefully we can narrow it down to a suspect and then bring charges against them.
Later, the police visited the Glow studio to investigate Rachel's life more deeply. They learned that the staff at the studio were familiar with Rachel. Although their information wasn't very helpful, the police found out that Rachel had an active presence on multiple dating websites, regularly meeting new people and going on dates. While her dating activities seemed to have ceased after she found love in Richard, the police speculated that someone she'd met through these websites might have been involved in the case. However, their speculations and hypotheses weren't going to be very helpful in solving this case. What made the situation even more unthinkable was that the trail road, located about 10 miles away from Baltimore, was considered a safe place. There'd never been any incidents of crime or anything unexpected happening in that area before. So this sudden case was a completely baffling situation for both the police and the community.
It's here Saturday, the day that she went missing, and I was here at 2 o'clock with my husband. The trail was packed. There was a lot of people here. There were dogs. There were a lot of girls walking by themselves.
You hate to hear of anything to happen to anyone, but to a woman, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. I mean, you can't even go out for a walk on a trail without losing your life.
Furthermore, numerous websites and online reports discussed the case, further diluting the information that was available. One source, whose identity we won't disclose, claimed that on August 5, 2023, Rachel's boyfriend Richard met her after she visited the studio and they went to the gym together. Subsequently, he dropped her off around 5 p.m. according to a Facebook status he posted. However, these updates were later removed. The police were vigilant about concealing any details from the public, making it challenging to ascertain accurate information. The case was in its initial stages, and all the available information remains a mystery waiting to be solved. Nevertheless, being the last person seen by Rachel, Richard swiftly became a person of interest, even though it was premature for the police to officially consider him a suspect in the case.
He was the initial complainant. Rachel's boyfriend was the complainant who reported the missing person. So obviously our personnel have spoken with him, but we are not in a position to say he's a suspect or that any person is a suspect.
However, Richard was aware that he'd come under suspicion at this point. He took to Facebook to assert his innocence, emphasizing that he was not the perpetrator. Yet questions lingered. What past was he talking about? While these details remain undisclosed secrets, the primary focus shifted to the moment when Richard voluntarily handed over his phone to the investigators and willingly agreed to provide a DNA sample. Harford County Sheriff Jeffrey Galler revealed that in the 6 weeks following Morin's murder, his department had invested $30,000 in overtime for patrols on the trail. They received over 700 tips from individuals across the nation and interviewed more than 5 people who were present on the trail the night of the murder. Despite these efforts, no conclusive evidence has been acquired to pinpoint a definite suspect. The reward for information that leads to an arrest currently stands at $10,000, and there's a possibility that an additional $15,000 may be added in the coming days. While the family began distributing flyers to people on the trail in an effort to gather information, the police, on the other hand, achieved their first breakthrough in the month of September.
I just want to start off by saying thank you for coming out tonight. I am Colonel William Davis, Chief Deputy of the Harford County Sheriff's Office. I know this briefing comes in late in the day, but last night we received critical pieces of information, and our detectives have been working throughout the night and today, running down our new leads. Once the new evidence came to light, Sheriff Galler was adamant that we needed to inform our community as soon as possible, and that's why we're here tonight.
As mentioned before, the information has been kept confidential, but it was disclosed that the police had discovered a DNA sample during the crime scene investigation. This DNA sample was eventually matched to an individual who was also a suspect in a crime in California that occurred back in March. However, the identity of this person still remains a mystery. The only lead they have now is this video. The case is currently in a full-fledged investigation phase with a few leads at hand. The police are actively seeking additional information about this case and are reaching out to the community for assistance via online platforms. Initially focusing on Rachel's boyfriend, then shifting to the hiker who discovered her body, the investigation has now honed in on a mystery man captured in a video. As of now, no new updates have been released to the public. Nevertheless, Harford County Sheriff Jeffrey Galler remains optimistic that the case will be solved soon and is confident that it's far from going cold. So, how long do you think it'll take to apprehend the mystery man? Do you believe Rachel's fate was a random incident? Or do you anticipate the story will soon take a more complex and twisted turn? Share your thoughts with us. We'd love to hear from you. If you have a particular case in mind that you'd like us to explore, kindly leave your suggestions in the comment section below.